Township Parsippany-Troy Hills, regular meeting, Township Council meeting, September 17, 2013.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Law. All right, hold on. Thank you. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Law by filing the notice in the office of the Township Clerk and by posting the meeting notice on the bulletin board at the municipal building on December 10, 2012, where it has remained posted since that date. A legal notice appeared in both the Daily Record on December 14, 2012, and the Star Ledger on December 13, 2012. It was forwarded by fax to other local newspapers and local radio station on December 10, 2012. In addition, adequate notice of the location change of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Law by filing the notice in the office of the Township Clerk and by posting the notice on the bulletin board at the municipal building on June 21, 2013, where it has remained posted since that date. A legal notice appeared in the Daily Record on June 26, 2013. It was forwarded by fax to the Star Ledger, Parsippany Life, and local radio station on June 21, 2013. Note, council meetings are videotaped and air on Cablevision Access Channel 21 at 12 p.m. on Sundays, and are also available for viewing at www.parsippany.net.
Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Here.
Mr. DePiero.
Here.
Mr. Ferrara.
Here.
Mr. Nelson.
Here.
Council President Stanton.
Here, also present, Mayor Barbario, Jasmine Lim, Business Administrator, Paul Casarelli, Assistant Business Administrator, John Inglesino, Esquire, Township Attorney, Yancey Wazirmis, Township Clerk. Please rise for a flag salute. Mr. Karifi.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
John, we're going to have to switch it here. Should we do that now for now? Yeah, why don't you do that now? Do I have to make a motion? Is it a resolution? It's in a resolution. Okay, so we're done resolution, so it'll come up.
Okay, upcoming meetings, October 1st, 2013, 7:30 p.m. Agenda meeting, which will be at Parsippany Hills High School, not Town Hall. Public invited, public participation. 10/8/2013, 7:30 p.m. Regular meeting, again at Parsippany Hills High School. Public invited, public participation. Mayor's presentations.
I'm going to face the audience. Oh, I shouldn't have moved it, I guess. Anyway. Harold Gantert is a friend of mine, and I'm going to read a proclamation on his behalf. Howard is a war hero in my eyes, and we've had many discussions, and one of the reasons why we have pride in Parsippany is because of a gentleman like Howard Gantert. So I'm going to read the proclamation from the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills. Whereas Harold Gantert was born on January 1st, 1922, and left Newark, New Jersey at the tender age of 21 to join the U.S. Air Force. And whereas on April 29th, 1944, as a flight navigator, Lieutenant Harold Gantert took off on a bombing mission when his plane was shot down over Germany, forcing him to parachute down. He was captured 4 days later and spent the next year as a POW in Stalag Luft III, a German prison camp. After a grueling march the prisoners of war were forced to endure, they were liberated by the Allied troops in 1945. And whereas Harold Gantert remained on active duty until 1965, when he retired as a lieutenant colonel after 23 years of service. He continues to be an active member of Parsippany United Methodist Church and has been the subject of a book written by Sandra Bostwick and Pastor Jeff Edwards. And whereas Harold is married to Queenie and moved their home to Parsippany in 1966, the marriage was blessed with 3 daughters, Linda, Gail, and Debbie, and they are proud grandparents of 3 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. And whereas Harold Gantert served 2 years on the Parsippany Board of Education from 1986 to 1988 and was inducted into the Parsippany High School Hall of Fame in 2006. Harold is the owner of Allied Rubber and Gasket Craft Company in East Orange, New Jersey, and is still working at the age of 91 years. And whereas for the last 22 years, Harold has been an active as a charter and lifetime member of the Kiwanis Club of Greater Parsippany, where he has achieved all the top accolades for giving back to the community. As sponsor of the Eliminate Project for Neonatal Tetanus, Harold received the Walter Zeller Award. He was also honored with the Tablet of Honor, George F. Hickson Award, and Lifetime Member Award in Kiwanian of the Year. Now therefore, I, James R. Barbario, the Mayor of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, do hereby proclaim September 17, 2013, as Harold Gantert Day, in honor of his selfless humanitarian efforts and devotions toward the welfare of his fellow citizens. I further encourage all citizens to follow by an example and to extend Harold Gantert's best wishes in all future endeavors. Dated the 17th day of September 2013. Harold, thank you. I just want to say, I met Harold back when I became a Kiwanian back in 2001. And Harold is a very good man. And I want to thank you, Harold, for your duty to the service, because as you see what's going on tonight, the public, democracy, it's your valor that did that for us. I want to thank you, and God bless you. Thank you.
Okay, bids to be taken September 19, 2013, 11 a.m. Upgrade resurfacing of the 85 by 185 asphalt and skate rink, Parsippany Boulevard for Parks and Forestry. September 26, 2013, 11 a.m. Roof replacement at the Child Daycare Center. Ordinances, second reading, public hearing. Ordinance 2013:24, Mr. DiPiero.
Ordinance 2013:24, an ordinance of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills in the County of Morris, New Jersey, providing for various sewer utility improvements for the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills and appropriating $4.4 million therefore, and providing for the issuance of $3,325,000 in general improvement bonds or notes of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to finance the same. The notice for the ordinance above was published in the Daily Record, the official newspaper of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, on July 22nd, 2013, and republished on August 26th, 2013. So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. DiPiero, second by Mr. Farrar. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to open this ordinance to the public. Make a motion. Motion by Mr. Creepy.
Second.
Second by Mr. Farrar. All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, I'll open up this ordinance only to the public.
Council President, if I can, if no one comes up, may I please make a comment, please?
Yes. Let me just, seeing no one come forward, I'll entertain a motion to close the public on this ordinance.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Farrar. Second by Mr. Creepy. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes. Mayor?
Thank you, Council President. I just want to make several... Thank you, Council President. I'd like to discuss this bond ordinance and why it's imperative and very important that we pass this ordinance tonight. You know, over the course of the year, we've been talking about the sewer surplus and how much is in there and how much needs to be in there, and we've spoken, and, you know, our experts have said we needed about $5 million. And, you know, I've said in the past that to use current cash would be kind of foolish, and here's the reasons why. And I'm going to read into the record. The Skyview Road Pump Emergency Project, now it's an emergency. The Skyview pump has failed and forced the main that is connected to it has collapsed. The township has temporarily created a bypass line and installed a backup pump system to carry waste to the bypass manhole in Morris Plains. The collective action was downsizing the pump station and install a half-mile of line to a force main within Grannis Ave, with an eventual discharge into the trunk line at Kathleen Place and Mountain Way. The cost to fix this problem ranges between $650,000 to $750,000. And just recently, the Lake Hiawatha Flood Station Emergency Project, which was part of the bond, the Lake Hiawatha Flood Station pump has failed. This pump station has a capacity to pump 118 million gallons per day of stormwater to the other side of the flood wall. The cost to fix this pump is estimated to begin at $300,000. Currently, 5 bypass pumps are in place to ensure operations. The failed pump will undergo repairs and a full evaluation to ensure peak efficiency. This pump station is the one that's down in Lower Lake Hiawatha, where in 2011 they had the flood there. That pump is vitally important to the residents in Lake Hiawatha. Now you take $300,000, $750,000, now you're $1 million into the surplus. To use current cash would be foolish. So I'm hoping that this council sees it, you know, fit to pass this ordinance. Now, I also want to speak about one thing that I really couldn't explain of it, so I'm going to hand it over to the township attorney because I discussed it with him. The Environmental Infrastructure Trust. And we can get bonds at I think half of no interest. Am I correct, Counselor?
Yes. Yes, Mr. Mayor. The state of New Jersey has an Environmental Infrastructure Trust, which is a state agency. A project such as this, at least 50% of your bonding would be eligible at 0% from the state's Environmental Infrastructure Trust program. The other half, or roughly half, could be bonded at market rate, tax-exempt bonds, AAA rated, even though Parsippany is not a AAA, and that rating today would be roughly 3.5%. But of course, rates have actually gone up over the last few months, so that also provides a borrowing option.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank
Okay,
you.
Mr. DiPiero.
Whereas the above ordinance was read in title on second reading and a hearing held thereon, now therefore be it resolved that said ordinance be passed on final reading, and that a notice of final passage of said ordinance be published in the newspaper according to law.
Second.
Motion by Mr. DiPiero, second by Mr. Farrar. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes. Ordinance 2013:25. Mr. Farrar.
An ordinance of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing the acquisition of real property known as Block 315, Lot 12, pursuant to the local land and building law. The above ordinance was published in its entirety in the Daily Record, the official newspaper of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, on August 23, 2013.
Motion by Mr. Farrar.
Second.
Second by Mr. Karifi. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to open this to the public, only this ordinance.
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Karifi.
Second.
Second by Mr. DePiero. All in favor? Aye. At this time, I'll open up this ordinance only to the public. See no one come forward, I'll entertain a motion to close.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Farrar, second by Mr. Karifi. All in favor? Aye. Mr. Farrar.
Whereas the above ordinance was read in title on second reading and a hearing held thereon, now therefore be it resolved that said ordinance be passed on final reading, and that a notice of final passage of said ordinance be published in the newspaper according to law.
Motion by Mr. Farrar,
Second.
second by Mr. Karifi. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes, ordinance 2013:26. Mr. Karifi.
An ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 169 Fire Prevention by the addition of a new section 169-19.2, identifying emblems and lightweight construction, and establishing a new fee in 169-18 of the revised general ordinance of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills. The above ordinance was published in its entirety in the Daily Record, the official newspaper of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, on August 23, 2013.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Karifi, second by Mr. DePiero. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to open this ordinance to the public.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Farrar, second by Mr. Karifi. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
At this time, I'll open up this ordinance to the public. See no one come forward, I'll entertain a motion to close this
Make a
ordinance.
motion.
Motion by Mr. Karifi,
Second.
second by Mr. Farrar. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Karifi.
Whereas the above ordinance was read in title on second reading and a hearing held thereon, now therefore be it resolved that said ordinance be passed on final reading, and that a notice of final passage of said ordinance be published in the newspaper according to law.
Motion by Mr. Karifi,
Second.
second by Mr. DePiero. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes, ordinance 2013:27. Mr. Nelson.
An ordinance of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills in the County of Morris, New Jersey, amending the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills Code, Chapter 372, Taxi Cabs and Limousines. The above ordinance was published in its entirety in the Daily Record, the official newspaper of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, on August 23, 2013.
Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Karifi. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to open this up to the public.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Farrar, second by Mr. Karifi. All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, I'll open up this ordinance to the public. See no one come forward, I'll entertain a motion to close.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Karifi. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Nelson.
Whereas the above ordinance was read in title on second reading and a hearing held thereon, now therefore be it resolved that said ordinance be passed on final reading, and that a notice of final passage of said ordinance be published in the newspaper according to law.
Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Karifi. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes, ordinance 2013:28. Mr. DePiero.
An ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 430 zoning of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, adding a new Article 49, establishing an RCR planned retail, commercial, residential overlay district, and designating certain zone boundaries in the township. The above ordinance was published in its entirety in the Daily Record, the official newspaper of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, on August 23, 2013.
Motion by Mr. DePiero.
Second.
Second by Mr. Farrar. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
This isn't the vote.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes, all right. At this time, before we go forward, I'm just going to lay out the ground rules for the public hearing on this. All right, first off, we're going to start out with a few presentations. Mr. Snikes, you're going to go first. Mr. Meth, you're going to go second. Mr. Burgess, you're going to go third. The council members are then going to have time to ask questions of the experts. After that, we're going to open up the public, where you'll be given 3 minutes to speak. We will be closing the public on this at 10:30 p.m. If we are not done, we will carry it over to the October 1st meeting. If you do speak tonight, you will not have a chance to speak at meetings in the future. You have to come in, you have to sign up, and the person that's on deck, please come up and sign in right after. If you ask any questions, we will not have interaction on the questions tonight. When the final public session is closed, we will have the questions, we'll write down what we believe is relevant, we'll answer questions, and the experts will answer your questions at the end. All right, once the public's closed, the council will deliberate, and then again, we'll have an opportunity to ask questions of the experts. We'll go over with the township attorney any legal issues that have arisen. Then the council will deliberate and then vote. Okay, I'll do that as they come up. Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to open this to the public, this ordinance only.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Farrar,
Second.
second by Mr. Karifi. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, first up, Mr. Snikes regarding the planning.
Good evening. Wow, that's loud. Good evening, everybody. Ed Snikes from the firm of Burgess & Associates. What I'll be going through tonight is an outline of an overview of the master plan consistency report that we had prepared and we reviewed for this ordinance. And then for the purposes of tonight, we have a PowerPoint presentation. I will be going through the planning elements of the master plan, and then I'll be handing the presentation over to Gordon Meth of RBA Group, and then back to Joe Burgess for the discussion of the fiscal impact report. The first item I'd like to focus in on is the 2004 Master Plan Reexamination Report. We had reviewed this report and prepared an actual document for the Planning Board. It was dated 9/5/2013. The Planning Board reviewed this study on September 9th of 2013. They also reviewed and approved the study and recommended it to the governing body without changes. The study findings and basic overview of the findings of the study provide for the inconsistencies and consistencies with the overall master plan. There are several inconsistencies that were identified. Inherent in a rezoning is an inconsistency usually with the actual land use plan. The land use plan of the township provides for the overall zoning scheme of the township. And in that, we have an inconsistency in the nature of what is actually being proposed. In addition to that, what's also provided for in the goals objectives, it talks about multifamily uses and discouraging additional multifamily uses. So there's also an inconsistency with that statement. In addition to that, there's also large retail is mentioned as discouraged, and I'll talk about that in a moment. The consistencies, there's 5 goals that I'll be identifying that we're consistent with and furthering through the actual amendment. In addition to that, we're promoting several objectives of the master plan. Just for purposes of organization and reference, when you do have inconsistencies, it's provided in the MLUL that under statute 40:55D-62 is that the governing body may adopt an amendment to a zoning ordinance that is in whole or in part inconsistent with or designed to effectuate the land use plan element. And then it goes on to say, subject to the reasons for the governing body being set forth, if in fact you were to further that ordinance. I just wanted to provide that as a general overview. In addition to that, what I'd like to provide for you tonight is an overview of the overall area. Again, just for purposes of orientation and discussion of some of the goals and objectives and some of the things we look to further and identify in the master plan. Under the RCR overlay area, what's shown in white on this exhibit is the outline of the RCR overlay area. It's part of the overall POD zone, which encompasses the entirety of the Waterview corporate center in the area that I'm outlining with the pointer. In addition to that, surrounding it to the north, you have the Doremus Family Cemetery, which borders a portion of the subject site. You also have the R3 residential. There's townhouses adjacent. There's an adjacent municipality municipal boundary line that fronts along Intervale Road. And adjacent to that on Intervale Road is the office development that fronts on Route 46 and Cherry Hill Road exit. In addition to that, on Sherwood Drive, you have the townhouse development in Mountain Lakes. On the opposite side of Route 46, we have multifamily apartments. We have the police department, post office, which everyone's probably well aware of, and then you have the commuter parking lot on eastbound 46. And so you have 46 to the bottom and Waterview Boulevard off to the right-hand side. In addition to that, just to give you a brief synopsis of the existing zoning, the current zoning encompasses the POD zone, which is the pinkish area that's illustrated on the exhibit. What's proposed as part of the overlay zone is the area encompassed by this black dashed line. You have Waterview Boulevard along the easterly side of the subject parcel, and you have Route 46 to the south. On the opposite side of Route 46, you have R5 multifamily residential and B1 highway commercial zoning. Just want to identify a few key features of the RCR ordinance, as it overlays. It does not replace the POD district. It overlays that district. It's an alternative zoning that could be utilized for the area that's identified on the proposed ordinance. In addition to that, it permits retail commercial buildings that can have one or more tenants as part of the overall development. It can have multiple uses, and the ordinance regulations, as you'll see in a moment, talk about specific features such as setback and requirements for where that actual use can occur within the subject zone. In addition to that, we have a minimum acreage of 15 acres for that specific zone. Under the residential townhouse dwelling component of this ordinance, we have the maximum of 6 dwelling units an acre is the overall density that's permitted, and it's regulated to the northerly area of this study area. In addition to that, we have a minimum 5 acres requirement, but a maximum 10-acre requirement in the RCR overlay ordinance. For purposes of just identifying it graphically on an exhibit, what we show here is the overall study area of the RCR overlay area. It shows a 50-foot buffer and a 65-foot setback from the northerly property line, which is adjacent with the R3 zone. Forest Drive is off to the top of the exhibit. You have Intervale Road, which is also off towards the westerly side. On that side, we have a 75-foot buffer and an 85-foot building setback for residential development. That is exhibited by the red dashed line that's shown on this exhibit is the actual residential building envelope or area for residential development. What the exhibit also shows in a blue line is a 125-foot setback requirement for commercial development from Intervale Road, a 300-foot setback from the R3 zone, and a 30-foot setback from the adjacent easterly property line. In addition, what's noted here is a 300-foot residential setback from Waterview Boulevard, as well as Route 46. And that encompasses the residential area. In addition to that, we have a 100-foot commercial setback from Route 46 and from Waterview Boulevard. Now referencing the master plan. In the master plan, the land use plan itself identifies the site as office, corporate, and professional offices within the Waterview Boulevard complex. The proposed RCR overlay zone is proposing a use that's not currently contemplated or identified in the land use plan. Excuse me. I apologize for that. So there is an inconsistency with the land use plan as it's identified. Goal number 1 of the master plan, and I'll be going through about 6 or 7 goals of the master plan, identifying quickly some of the items that are either inconsistent or consistent with the proposed ordinance. Under goal 1, it talks about proper distribution of land uses. And under goal number 1, the proposal restricts incompatible land uses and establishes the proper distribution of land uses. And it does that through the proposed townhouse development component of the RCR overlay. The townhouse component provides a transitional use between single-family residential R3 moderate density to the north, as you recall the illustration, and proposed commercial, which is a component of the RCR development. And that proposed commercial would be adjacent and along Route 46. In addition to that, the setbacks establish the proper distribution of land uses to one another. As I've identified, there are setbacks specific for each types of use, and it provides the appropriate buffering in relationship to adjacent and surrounding land uses. In addition, goal number 1 talks about preserving and protecting the residential areas. Under that goal, the proposal furthers that goal through the adequate and comparable setbacks and buffers and development standards. And those comparable standards are related to the actual standards of the other zones within the municipality and the township. Drainage will be required to meet the standards of greater infiltration than exists today, just through the standards that we currently have in our ordinance. And also the maximum building height will have a maximum height of 35 feet for residential, so it's a proper relationship to an adjacent R3 residential zoning. And it also has a retail height requirement of a maximum of 40 feet. The existing office requirement is 60 feet. It can only be 60 feet at about 260 feet away from the adjacent R3 zone. The retail is proposed to be 300 feet away from the adjacent R3 zone. So in and out of itself, relative to the building height and the proximity or setback from adjacent R3 zoning, it provides the appropriate zoning controls to provide that appropriate transition to adjacent single-family uses. I wanted to identify that under this goal. Goal number 3, that's a goal which talks about attached residential townhouse development at this location was not contemplated at the time of this prior re-examination report, meaning the 2004 report. And therefore such a proposal represents an inconsistency. Goal 3 also talks about not encouraging further multifamily elsewhere within the municipality than what is actually prescribed by the land use plan. And so that in and of itself is a specific inconsistency with the master plan. While it's inconsistent, we wanted to identify that the proposal does provide certain features that the council should consider. It provides a suitable alternative promoting the efficient use of land in close proximity to goods and services along Route 46 due to its location. A suitable population density with design standards to safeguard the public welfare, uses, and designed to complement one another. In other words, they're designed with the appropriate setbacks and relationships to one another to provide that feature. It also furthers the local and state development standards, and they shall be satisfied. That's a requirement of any development, and it will be a requirement of a future development within the RCR overlay if this council approves it. Under goal number 4, the buffer zone separating incompatible land uses. Under that specific goal and objective, we wanted to identify the following for consideration. The proposal contains sufficient and comparable buffer setbacks, and buffer requirements and setbacks and performance requirements. What I mean by that is that the appropriate setbacks to adjacent zones are established. You have a 65-foot residential setback and you have a 300-foot residential setback. That provides the appropriate relationship of the specific uses to the adjacent zones in existing zoned neighborhoods. Secondly, the requirement offsets potential impacts of adjacent land uses consistent with established zones in the township. We offer the example of the PRD zone along Route 46 at the corner of North Beverick Road and Route 46. That zone has very similar standards to this standard, the standards that are within the RCR overlay. And it also is something I wanted to identify is that the requirements of this zone are consistent with what is provided in adjacent municipalities. If you look and you recall the initial slide that we provided that provided the overview, in the adjacent township of Mountain Lakes, there is a townhouse development acting as a transitional use to adjacent single-family zoning. We're looking to implement a similar characteristic in this proposal. We're also preserving the topographic ridgeline along Intervale Road. As this council will recall, we had deliberations regarding the 50-foot setback. That 50-foot setback and buffer area was increased to 75 feet. The reason why it was increased to 75 feet is that 50 feet encompassed that ridgeline and would have preserved that ridgeline. But that beyond that, there are trees that it was identified that we should preserve at the top of that ridgeline to help reduce the potential impacts along Intervale Road. And so with that, that provides the proper transition of land uses and transition to adjacent municipalities. Goal 5 also identifies under large-scale commercial uses that large-scale commercial uses was discouraged at the time of the prior master plan reexamination report. And that's a specific language. It's discouraged. We offer that large-scale retail centers can create concerns of traffic and an increase in municipal services and expansive land use patterns if not properly controlled. And those are specific concerns that the planning board's well aware of. We're well aware of as consultants. We wanted to make sure the appropriate standards were provided in the ordinance. It's identified that we're somewhat inconsistent with that because it's discouraging it, but yet that a retail center at this location, this specific location, offers an opportunity to improve the stability of the community and zoning within that community by adding to the range of retail, food, and department store options. Just by providing another appropriately sized center, you can further those features. We also enhance the sustainability of the existing office market. Currently, right now, as you know, the site, the area is zoned for office development. We are aware of studies that talk about a 21.9 or 21.6% vacancy rate within the Parsippany region. And within the Parsippany region, that equates to about 3.9 million square feet of vacant office space. That's something to consider in looking at alternatives within the zone plan and zoning ordinance. It's also a highly viable frontage and connections provided along Route 46, those regional highway corridors. Also, you have Waterview Boulevard providing direct access to Route 80 and Route 202. Those are direct connections to regional highway networks that would be furthered. Under goal number 5, it also talks about consolidated development within a commercial area. And it's identified that a unified and signalized access to such a development at this location would provide that unified and consolidated development. Because it's controlled access, it can be done safely, as you'll hear in a moment, and that would provide those specific features and reduce curb cuts. So that component of Goal 5 is actually being furthered by this development. Also under Goal 5, it talks about commercial needs and aesthetics. The alternative development option would add to the range of retail, as I identified it earlier, and department store options for the community. It also promotes the physical and aesthetic objective through the requirement for comprehensive building and site development improvement standards. What I'm talking about there is that we have specific features worked into the ordinance that call for architectural treatments, landscape treatments, buffer treatments, and those specific features help to further that goal of the master plan. Goal 6 talks about transitional uses and the requirement and the recommendation for transitional uses. Under that goal, the proposed residential townhouse use that's proposed in this RCR overlay, it's offered for the council's consideration that provides a transition between moderate density development of the R3 zone and the commercial development that's proposed as part of the RCR overlay. It also represents a proper arrangement of land uses by providing sufficient buffer requirements, the 50 feet, the 75 feet, and the adjacent buffer requirements, and separates and mitigates the potential effects of incompatible land uses. Under goal number 10, which relates to this development, it talks about protect and conserve the water supply for the township of Parsippany-Troy Hills. It's identified that the water and sewer demand was evaluated and determined by the sewer department and the water department to be sufficient to supply the scope contemplated and approved that's on the books currently, as well as future development within the community. The uses and standards consistent with the wellhead restrictions. They're consistent. As you recall, the gas station use was a prior consideration at this location. Gas stations aren't permitted in the wellhead tier areas. Those have been removed. And whatever uses are proposed are actually consistent and further the wellhead requirements. The storage, if there's a storage of any potential contaminants or pollution sources, they have to be done in accordance with strict BMP requirements or best management plan requirements. The stormwater design will also have to meet the strong stormwater standards of the Parsippany ordinance as well. Wetland regulations will also have to be complied with. So those features specifically further goal number 10 of the 2004 master plan. And this just sets forth again the criteria for which the governing body can look into consistencies and inconsistencies. Just as a quick summary for the governing body and the public, under the 2004 Master Plan Reexamination, the specific inconsistencies are that we have under Goal 3 that additional multifamily housing, where not prescribed, is discouraged. And what we're proposing here is that the multifamily is appropriate because it's in close proximity to services and goods, to also close to major highways and a source of access. In addition, it provides the transitional use between moderate density residential and the commercial development, as is done in many areas and many zones within the township. The land use plan does not contemplate this use for the subject area, and therefore represents an inconsistency. But those is another inconsistency. It's a sort of a general inconsistency, but it's balanced by the benefits. Goal number 5, relating to large-scale retail buildings, is not encouraged. Considerations offered that adequate safeguards are provided to mitigate the impacts associated with such a facility. Some of the consistencies for your consideration under the 2004 Master Plan Reexamination is that under Goal number 1, it's a proper distribution of land uses. Goal number 4 provides adequate buffer zones to separate incompatibilities. Under Goal number 5, it does talk about improving stability of the community by improving the range of retail options. Under Goal number 5, promotes consolidated development with unified access, as I talked about with the entrance points into the property. Under Goal number 6, provides a transitional use to act as a buffer for adjacent uses. Goal number 10 protects wellhead areas with adequate capacity, is available to development, and will be required to meet the recharge objectives as well as the wetland objectives, as well as the strong BMP requirements of the Wellhead Protection Ordinance. In addition to that, under the master plan, there are several items that are called general objectives of the master plan, and I just want to quickly identify these, is to guide the appropriate use of developmental lands that were proposed that will promote the general welfare. And by doing so, I think the development with the appropriate controls does further this objective. In addition, does not conflict with the development and general welfare of adjacent municipalities. As you recall, we talked about the buffering and access being prohibited from Intervale Road. And those specific features are addressed and provided for in the ordinance to protect the general welfare of the adjacent municipality. In addition, the appropriate population densities and concentrations will contribute to a well-being of neighborhoods, of persons and neighborhoods, excuse me, and that is provided for through the appropriate densities and adjacencies to adjacent development. In addition, we provide a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques. What that means is we're talking about the development standards. We have performance standards for specific features such as the architecture and the landscape requirements of the development. So those objectives are actually being furthered. And so with that, that would summarize my presentation, and I'd like to hand it over to Gordon to talk about the traffic impact review.
Thank you. For the record, Gordon Meth from the firm of RBA Group. To review traffic, I guess the place we really have to start is what does the current zoning allow for, and what does the proposed overlay zone provide for land use? And after a thorough review of the ordinances for the POD zone, we find that 259,000 square feet would be of office space could be developed on the property in question under current zoning. With the proposed overlay zone, the proposal includes a 40,000 square foot grocery store, 149,900 square feet of other retail space, and 60 townhouse units. Comparing the morning peak hour to that development, making comparison of the morning peak hour traffic, what we have under current zoning is that office complex could result in 361 inbound trips, and that would be the peak direction for which most of the infrastructure in the area has been designed for. The overlay zoning would result in 218 trips, according to the trip generation rates from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. That's a change or reduction of 143 trips. In the outbound direction, which is the off-peak direction, in the area. The current zoning would have 50 trips per hour. The overlay zone would provide for 179 trips per hour for an increase of 129 trips. So overall in the morning, we have a slight overall reduction, but a fairly large reduction in the inbound.
I don't want to sit here all day doing this.
A fairly large reduction in peak hour direction. For the evening peak hour, the current zoning would result in 63 inbound or off-peak trips. The overlay zoning would result in 303 new trips for a change of 240 trips in the off-peak direction. In the outbound trips, the office building development would result in 306 trips versus 297 trips for the overlay zoning, for a slight reduction of 9 trips in the peak direction. Overall, there'd be an increase of 231 trips during the evening peak hour, but as shown here, it's all in the off-peak direction. Saturday peak hour traffic, which is a representation of weekend traffic in the highest hour of it. The current zoning would result in 61 trips in the inbound direction. The overlay zoning, 373 trips for an increase of 312 trips. The outbound direction, an office building would have 52 trips. The overlay zoning would result in 288 trips for an increase of 236 trips in that direction. Now, so the change in traffic you'd be looking at on a Saturday is comparable to about a 250,000 square foot office building in terms of peak traffic flow. Now, on a Saturday, the one thing to note is that Route 46 between Parsippany Boulevard and Cherry Hill Road and Waterview Boulevard, the traffic on Saturday peak hours is about 45% of the weekday peaks. So there's actually a fair amount of traffic capacity on weekends for this traffic. With that being said, a thorough analysis was done, intersection by intersection, of what this extra traffic would do. Route 46 and Waterview Boulevard is the area where the largest impact would be seen. There'd be increases and delays for left turns on both directions of Waterview Boulevard. Now that's a function of all the extra turning traffic, and this would be an issue for the development of an office building under current zoning, as well as the proposed POD or the proposed zoning. This could be addressed, and it was stated in studies done previously that it would be addressed through adding left turn arrows to both directions of Waterview Boulevard, adding a southbound right turn lane, and retiming the signal. With that, the delays will be less than about 1 minute, which is better than the existing case, actually. The existing case has delays of up to 2 minutes in peak hours. Now, there was some misinformation disseminated, and it was based on taking one number out of a report out of context. And that was, I guess it was quoted as a 26-minute increase in delay. Now, that would have been a theoretical delay had no improvements been done to this intersection with the proposed development entirely implemented. Other locations, that includes Parsippany and Route 46, Route 46 and Cherry Hill Road, Waterview Boulevard and 202, and several other intersections, we'd see small increases in delay due to the increased traffic. These could all be addressed through signal retiming. And they would be comparable to what one would see for an as-of-right development vis-a-vis an office building. Now, with that being said, from a traffic standpoint, what you have overall, let me just go back. We have a situation where you do have increases in traffic in the PM peak hour and the off-peak direction, and on Saturdays. The peak direction in the morning, you have a reduction of traffic. So overall, the traffic impacts are on a wide range, on the large scale, really non-existent. Other engineering issues that need discussion: stormwater and New Jersey DEP permits. Any development within Parsippany that's over a quarter-acre new impervious is required to meet our stormwater standards, which result in reductions in peak runoff rate from developments from the existing case. So there really isn't a flooding issue with this. So you will have, with those stormwater regulations, reductions in peak runoff rate, water quality standards that have to be maintained, and groundwater recharge that has to be maintained. And there's also, within this, on this lot, there are freshwater wetlands and state open waters with riparian zones, all of which have to be respected and need permits from New Jersey DEP. Now with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Joe Burgess for fiscal impacts.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, I'm Joseph Burgess of the firm Burgess Associates. As you had heard earlier, Ed Snikes from my office had presented the planning analysis. It's my responsibility to provide the fiscal impact assessment, which the firm was also asked to prepare. The underlying purpose of the planning analysis was to assess the fiscal implications of the proposed rezoning, which would enable 60 three-bedroom townhouses, and it's my understanding that they are approximately 2,500 square feet in size. And in addition to that, to round it off, we wrote 190,000 square feet of retail. The exact figure is 189,900 square feet. Our analysis was really broken down into three distinct components. First and foremost, we did a series of projections, one on population, one on the number of children, and one on the number of jobs to be created by virtue of this application. In addition to that, we did an analysis of the tax ratables and the taxes generated by the proposed project. Excuse me. And then from that, we did a cost revenue analysis on both the municipal budget side as well as on the Board of Education side of the equation to give a good sense of what the individual components would be. And then finally, in addition to those components, we looked at a number of other indices. We specifically looked at the prospective residents of the site and the retail trade expenditures that could be anticipated to be projected from these residents. And in addition to that, we assessed the development fees associated with the construction of the project, which also represent revenue to the municipality. We actually used two different methodologies to examine this issue. First and foremost, we used what's considered the classic per capita planning analysis to determine costs. And by that, we do a proportionate evaluation on a per capita basis to determine the various costs associated with the project. Well, that has been historically used by planners and economists to give a good, quick snapshot of proposed developments. We do recognize that there are some flaws in that methodology. It tends to overestimate costs. So in addition to that, we also offered for the council's consideration a second, more customized approach where we examined specific budgetary components on an individual line item basis. We find that to be helpful because, for example, to give one example to assess why per capita methodology may not necessarily translate on a per person or per student basis. If I, with 2 children, moved into the local municipality and I had children in the 4th and 8th grade, if we just used the per capita methodology, it would suggest that if we assume a cost of $15,000 per student, then my family alone would generate costs of $30,000. In reality, by virtue of 2 children moving into the school system in 2 different grades, it's highly unlikely we're going to need 1 additional school teacher. We're not going to have to buy an additional desk and paperwork and everything else So consequently, we look at a more refined analysis to determine what the actual costs of some of the individual components would be, because I think it's more reflective of the real-world situation. So let's start with the population. In 2010, the state of New Jersey estimates that the population of Parsippany is 53,709 people. We used the state of New Jersey estimates of population size. We also used the Rutgers University's Center for Urban Policy Research analysis of population projections of various multifamily and townhouse developments to get a sense of what the population of these 60 townhouse units would be. The Center for Urban Policy Research analyzed literally thousands of townhouse dwelling units throughout the state of New Jersey, and we have actually cross-referenced their information going back and looking at projects we were involved in to determine whether or not the numbers were a fair representation of what could take place. And applying their multipliers, these 60 dwelling units would generate approximately 142 people to the site. It represents less than 0.5% increase to the population of the community. We also looked at the number of children that would be residing on site and then refined that to specifically talk about school children and public school attendees. All too often in these kinds of settings, I find that when you talk about the public school children anticipated from a project, everybody says, I've driven by townhouse development A or B or C, and we see a lot more kids running around the development. Well, the reality is that there are a decent number of children in the project, but over half of any one development in a townhouse development, they are preschool age. And using, again, the Rutgers University Center for Urban Policy Research data, in conjunction with our own analysis of literally thousands of dwelling units that we've been involved with over the years, where we've examined the issue, we can project that there would be a total of 23 children on site. A little over half of that will be preschoolers. We anticipate 10 public school children coming out of the project. And using the Rutgers data, we can give an anticipated breakdown of K through 5, the middle school, and the high school. And you can see the numbers before you. Now, oftentimes people will say, won't those preschoolers grow up, stay in the development, and then impact the school system? Oftentimes, families with children at some point decide they want the larger private backyard, and the data clearly suggests that large numbers of those preschoolers do in fact end up moving out of the development into a detached single-family dwelling. Oh. Excuse me. We also looked at employment data. Now, there's two pieces of background data on this that I think merit attention. First, some people utilize the New Jersey Council on Affordable Housing projections of growth, employment growth, to give us an assessment of what they anticipate the numbers to be. And if we applied that figure to this project, it would suggest that there would be somewhat in excess of 500 jobs created by virtue of this development. I think that's an estimation of what we can anticipate here. More recent studies by the state and by, again, Rutgers University suggest that we should see a little less than 300 jobs created by virtue of this application. Now, these numbers are all important in terms of doing the per capita analysis, which I'll be getting into in a moment. Now, we looked at the value of this project and met with the township tax assessor to confirm some of the numbers. Based on that discussion, we project that the total equalized value of the project will be $44.2 million. We applied that figure to the tax rate, and we come up with an estimated annual tax revenue of $1.137 million annually. Excuse me for 1 second. Hold this for a second. Sorry about that. We also examined the municipal budget, broke it down by various categories to enable us to assess the implications of the development of individual budgetary line items. We took that information, we took the estimate of number of residents or employees, depending on which component of the analysis we were looking at, and made determinations about the per capita cost of development for both the residential side and the non-residential side. And looking at the municipal revenue and the school revenue and the associated costs associated with each of those components, we concluded that there will be a net revenue surplus of about $735,000 annually utilizing the per capita methodology. Now, as I had indicated, we do feel that the per capita methodology does somewhat overestimate costs. So we also looked at the more refined analysis, as I mentioned earlier, and using that more refined methodology, we think there would be a slight increase in that net revenue surplus to about $880,000. Now, in terms of per capita retail trade expenditures, the one thing we do know that in the Parsippany region, the average household retail trade expenditures is about $24,000 a year. Now, when we apply that to the 60 dwelling units, we would anticipate that these residents will expend in the region a little less than $1.5 million annually. I cannot say that with any certainty that that number will be expended locally. But when you think about supermarket expenditures, which are typically a very localized expenditure, if you do the math based on $150 a week spent at a supermarket, that alone would suggest about $12.5 million, if memory serves, would be spent at the local supermarkets. So you can begin to understand where these numbers fall into place. Finally, in addition to that type of cost revenue analysis, there are other fees associated with development. We spoke to the various building departments here in town to find that in terms of building subcode fees, this project would generate about $286,000. In terms of electrical, plumbing, and fire subcode fees, it'll generate about $25,000. In terms of hookup fees for water and sewer connections, and that's the big issue, it's a little over $1.1 million. So in total, those fees would generate about $1.4 million in fees to the municipality. Now, we anticipate these fees to be received over a projected 3-year build-out of the project, whenever that would occur. And that ends my portion of the presentation.
Okay, now the council's going to get an opportunity to ask a question. Just do me a favor, we're going to go one at a time, one question at a time, and just go on to the next. Mr. DiPiero, anything? We get to ask questions of the experts. We're going to do one question at a time and pass to the next person.
Well, one of the questions raised by some of the residents was the square footage of the townhouses was not included in those calculations. What is the square footage of the townhouses? When you calculate the square footage of the office, of the commercial property, you didn't also include the square footage for the townhouses.
Mr. DiPiero, thank you for that question. We did try to clarify that it was about a 2,500 square foot floor plate overall for each one of the townhouses that were at least contemplated in the concept plan that we saw, that this council may have seen and/or the planning board.
So that'd be 2,500 times
Times the 60 units.
60 units.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Farr? Anything? Okay, Mr. Burgess, a question for the employment. It says 285 new positions?
Yes.
Okay, I remember a poll that just went out, and I believe the number was somewhere 536 new.
Actually, that number came from the applicant's planner's report. He used the Council on Affordable Housing multiplier, which suggests 2.8 jobs per 1,000 square feet. I have seen more recent information that suggests anywhere from 1 to 2 jobs per 1,000 square feet for retail development. And knowing the history behind COA's methodology and determining how they arrived at that 2.8 figure, I'm more comfortable suggesting the lower figure. I think that's a more reasonable
For
assessment.
people that answered the poll, don't you think 536 compared to 285's a little misleading?
Based on the manner in which the COA methodology was initially established, I think it is misleading. You have to remember, COA is in the business of encouraging more affordable housing construction. And part of a municipality's affordable housing obligation is based upon the number of jobs that are projected in a community. So if you use a formula that suggests a larger employment projection, they're going to give the municipality a larger affordable housing obligation. And I think that's the genesis of that number.
Okay, Mr. Creepy.
My question's to Mr. Meth. In reference to the traffic study, I see here that all of these studies are done for peak hours.
Correct.
So, the current zoning would be for an office building. So primarily, most of that traffic would be between 7:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning and then 4 and 5:30 at night.
Correct.
Correct? So these comparisons are for that time frame. But the overlay zoning, you would have traffic going in and out of that area all day till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. So this would not just be a peak hour, because a regular office building, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're not going to have much traffic going in and out of there. And also, you may have touched on it, but I know that this study only includes Saturday. I mean, what about Sunday? Because these other things are going to be open on Sunday.
I'll answer the second part of that question first. Okay. I tried to mention in my presentation, but the Saturday peak hour is what we deem to be the highest hour that we analyze for the weekend. And it's the hour in which the highest traffic occurs on the weekend and the highest trip generation happens. And the presumption is if that works, then every other hour works. And when we analyze capacity of roads and determine delay and level of service, it's all based on an analysis of peak hour operations. The idea is we find the composite worst case scenario of traffic and area traffic and the development's traffic. That's why we analyze specific peak hours, and always do. And it gives us a representation of delay. Now, so from a traffic analysis standpoint, we always look at peak hours and focus on them, so we can analyze a composite worst-case hour. If you looked at an hour if you looked at something in the middle of the day, you would tend to have less traffic coming in and out of a specific development, or less traffic on the roadway, and therefore it has lesser impact.
Mr. Nelson?
My question is for Mr. Burgess. I would have done the math myself, but my cell phone died, so I can't do the calculator. So just a simple math question. According to your report, you're saying that this project will bring in approximately, I'm just going to use round numbers, approximately $245,000 in revenues for the municipality each year. Currently, no, in gross revenues. The township will take in approximately $69 million this year in revenues and taxes. What percentage of the entire revenue stream with this project
They already asked.
Okay.
In terms of a percentage, like you, I can't do that off the top of my head.
Yeah, I know. I just,
But it's a relatively small percentage. Yeah.
Mr. Farrar?
Mr. Burgess, I guess I want to follow up on what Councilman Nelson said. That projection of 285, it's if everything is occupied, meaning the townhouses and... He used the number 285,000. 245, I apologize.
Right.
I'm saying that projection is if everything is occupied,
Yeah, it's assuming occupancy of the project. All the
at
numbers.
maximum, correct?
Yes,
I'm sorry?
yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Snikes? Just a quick question, because I mean, I'm going through this with the consistencies and non-consistencies of the master plan. Basically, we could be here over and over again against stuff in the master plan, because if it looks good on paper, we could keep changing it. We could just keep coming here with new projects that go against what we have written, right?
This is a provision of the municipal land use law. It allows you to take a look at something that might be inconsistent with your prescribed zoning that was established at one point in time. Things change over time,
No, I know.
and there you have to respond. Sometimes you have to respond to those things, or you want to respond to those things, and that's what the municipal land use law allows you to do. Could you keep doing it? Of course.
Continue.
Is it encouraged? Probably not. It's better to amend your master plan and adjust the master plan in that realm.
Okay. Mr. Creepy?
My question's for Mr. Burgess. I see here on your charts that you have a cost, and, you know, it talks about our municipal budget summary. I don't see anything in here, and I know this question came up at our last meeting, about public safety, crime with this project. There's nothing including in here what the additional cost is that this is going to create for our public safety. How many more police officers we're going to need, the effects on EMS, our first aid squads, the amount of calls. Do we have any idea what that's going to be?
In the text, we did give a breakdown on a proportionate basis as to what some of those costs are. We did not get information on the number of calls from various shopping centers like this to be able to do that evaluation. But we did point out that with 142 residents, this project in and of itself doesn't generate, the residential portion doesn't generate the need for an additional police officer. The state estimate is that municipalities, suburban municipalities like Parsippany, require one police officer for every 500 residents. The 142 residents in and of themselves do not generate, you know, a full additional police officer. We did point out some of the individual costs that are associated with this development. It's in the report, but again, we did not do the breakdown on the number of calls coming from these kinds of developments because we just didn't have the information at the time the report was to be delivered.
Mr. Nelson? Okay, good.
Just a follow-up to that question.
Yes.
I have done some, I have made calls, being that I was involved in law enforcement. I know I've worked with a lot of different towns in Morris County that have these type of shopping centers and stuff, and I can tell you that there will be a large increase in generated response calls to these facilities. So, you know, I don't know if that's something that you can try to get for us to see what kind of impact that is going to have on our police department and our other public safety.
Yeah, actually, we attempted to get the information, but at the time we were called to do the study, there was a limited amount of time, but certainly I'll try to get that information.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, at this time, everyone's good with questions, right? Okay, at this time, we'll be taking a 5-minute break. Yeah.
9 o'clock.
To make a motion to reconvene?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Karifi to reconvene, second by Mr. Farrar. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes, at this time, I will entertain a motion to open this ordinance up to the public.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Farrar, second by Mr. Karifi. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, when you come up, please sign in. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak. At the 2-minute, 30-second mark, you'll be given a heads up that you have 30 seconds. I'm sorry, at 3 minutes, you will be cut off completely.
Mr.
What do you
Stanton.
got here?
Mr. Stanton.
Yes. This is this.
So if I also may request, if everyone
Yes.
can please write their name legibly so that I can read it.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah. Whenever.
Stop, and then just reset. It'll go to 3. Should be good.
Where's the stop? Where's the stop button?
Start, hit it again.
Oh, okay.
Once you hit start, it turns to stop.
Okay.
Once again, at 10:30, we will be shutting down the public session on this, and we will continue October 1st if it goes fast. It's now 9 p.m. Okay.
It went dark.
They're not on button?
I will give him a couple of seconds.
Yeah, but stop it, make it easier.
No,
Hit stop, okay. Okay, I got you. Ah, cool. Okay,
It's easy.
I got you. I didn't want it to die.
Again, council members, make sure you take down notes, questions that are asked, and at the end of the public session, which, whether it ends today or next time, we'll ask the questions to the experts.
Chris.
Ed,
This is the mic.
oh, you want to use this one?
No, it's
Oh,
on.
there it goes.
there you go.
They must have
Thank
shut us
you.
down.
Sigmund Balaban, 10 Grecian Street. I'm going to direct my comments just to the council because I'm their constituent. And I think what tonight proves is that anybody can talk about anything and they don't have to make sense. The traffic issue talks in terms of time. It does not mention how long an 18-wheeler would take to go from point A to point B. It doesn't talk about school buses, and anybody that's got caught behind a school bus knows what that can do to your travel time. We are on a slippery slope here, and I thought that your responsibility was to preserve the quality of the community. I think somebody ought to have some business development and run the figures there if we fill the vacant office buildings and storefronts that are vacant. It's not exactly like we need another supermarket. I think we're pretty well fed here. Listening, I kept on thinking of Paul Revere for some strange reason, and wondering what he would say, and would be something like, the deception is here, the deception is here. Our neighborhood's about to be destroyed. Your responsibility is to protect our community. For whatever reason that you haven't been able to hear the community in the past, you will hear it in November. For whatever reason, you elected to restrict us only speaking one time. And I think I know the logic, and I'm pretty sure you checked with council before implementing that, but that's okay. November will be upon us and upon you before you know it. Another thing I think you should realize is, if you want to go back into history, let me quote John Paul Jones, I have not yet begun to fight. Thank you.
I'll keep this one.
Arnie Berg, 383 East Halsey. Also, another one of your responsibilities is to make sure this town progresses. We have a lot of empty office space. We don't need another office building. We can use an upscale store. We do not have an upscale store, grocery store in this town. You've strung the town, whatever, has strung along Whole Foods, Target, the developers for not quite a year now. We need some closure on this. We need some progress on this. We need some jobs out of this. Okay? Yes, we do.
Please
People
don't
have
make
to-
comments.
people
We're gonna
have to
you
pay their
removed,
taxes.
please, in the public. Thank you.
And we'll be polite to everyone else that's contrary to our opinion. We need the jobs. Short-term jobs, construction jobs, great jobs, okay? We know the first day we get onto a job is when we're working ourselves out of a job to go to the next one. This is our next one, okay? We all vote 2 in November, okay? We're looking for, you got all the managers. They're not low minimum wage jobs. All the people that own the businesses, the new businesses that are coming through those small other strip stores that are going to be there. We need that. Okay, and we need the ratables. Thank you.
Mary Przicki, 273 Marcella Road. You know, I've been active in this town probably since the early 80s, maybe a couple of years before that even. And I've been to almost every single one of the major developments when it was in the planning stage. And I drove a school bus for 26 years, so I have experience with traffic. I don't have it on a computer-generated project. I sat in it, and I watched it grow. And I watched and listened to every traffic expert come before the board and to the council and say, oh, the impact would be minimal. Well, the impact was always major. We were always late for schools because we'd get stuck in the traffic. Up solutions. Oh, okay. We'll retime the lights. Hey, have you ever been by Rita Drive in Littleton Road with the retimed lights? The Park Road one, the Allentown Road one. Goes on and on and on. Think about the traffic that happens in the morning and now at lunch hour, the increase there, and at night. And then we, the residents, had our little safety, our little peace and quiets on Saturdays and Sundays. And now you're going to take that away. And don't say that's not going to bring in traffic, because it is. You people listen to us in the 80s with the prudential track when we didn't want mixed land use. You listened to us when we didn't want the same mixed land use that would have went in front of Town Hall where somebody was going to give us a civic center. Oh, how nice and lovely. We said no. We, the residents, said no, because you, the council, listened to us. And it's time really to stop and listen to the people. I listened to the presentation tonight and I thought, who's paying for it? I am, the taxpayer. And I swear that that was so slanted that the developer should have been paying for that presentation, not me. Not me. The inconsistencies with what he had to say.
30 seconds.
Oops. Are pretty long and strong, and please watch those inconsistencies and listen to the residents who say inconsistencies are important to us. Say no.
Good evening. My name is Rob Simon. I'm an attorney with Herald Law on behalf of Citizens for Health, Safety, and Welfare, Inc., doing business as Don't Rezone Waterview, a neighborhood organization. You are all aware that yesterday I submitted to the township clerk, as well as to Mr. Inglesino, with copies to all of you, of a letter with numerous enclosures, 11 enclosures, which supplemented prior correspondence that I've submitted with regard to this proposed ordinance. We also included in yesterday's submission a protest petition under NJSA 40:55D-63, which requires, as a result of the submission of the protest petition, that the proposed zoning amendment must receive a favorable vote of 2/3 of all the members of the fully constituted governing body. Now, in making this calculation, we followed the procedure outlined by case law, including the case of Dinky Woods versus West Windsor, Law Division case from 1996, and considering only the area or portion of the lot or land which actually lies within the 200 feet of the boundaries of the property to be rezoned. This is also consistent with the municipal land use law, specifically in NJSA 40:55D-12. The calculation of the 200-foot radius is not to be done from any street that may abut a property to be rezoned. That would be blatantly contrary to the intent of the municipal land use law, especially considering the language that says it's the lots or land extending 200 feet in all directions that are to be included. I hope you also noticed that the Borough of Mountain Lakes, as the owner of Intervale Road and Sherwood Drive, signed the protest petition. Moving forward, we feel that the entire procedure that it's led us all here to be considering this evening's ordinance is fatally flawed and incredibly tainted. This started back at the end of last year. The planning board never had jurisdiction to consider a developer's application for zoning ordinance amendment and concept review. There's nothing in the municipal land use law and municipal law that permitted that application to take place, to have 4 hearings, to hear testimony from the developer's numerous experts, to hear no testimony from any expert from the general public. It's blatantly in violation of municipal land use law, because even as it determines a concept review, they can only be heard by a planning board where there's no use variance required. And clearly, at the time, considering to right this second, there's use variance that's required before a zoning amendment can take place. That improper procedure led to our introduction of this ordinance. The developer's experts provided all that night of testimony. We are here tonight being allowed 3 minutes, including professional experts. I counted, and all the experts tonight, even just Burgess and Associates, were provided with 35 minutes of an opportunity to explain to you their position on the ordinance. It is egregious that experts aren't allowed at least 5 minutes per. I've also provided information to Mr. Inglesino as to conflict of interest of Burgess Associates, Mr. Snikas, Mr. Burgess, Mr. Meth, in representing both the planning board as well as this township body, and making a determination and getting a recommendation pursuant to section 55D-26 of the municipal land use law in terms of consistency with the master plan. This is spot zoning at its best. This is an opportunity for the developer to
Okay,
use...
sir, your time's up. Sorry.
Next.
Thank you.
I'm Boris Kushkuley. My credentials and PhD in physics with a strong background in computational modeling. Right now I'm serve as Chief Digital Officer in Common Health, and among our other responsibilities, I'm in charge of analytics. I help calculating the area that petitions signed, comparing to 200 feet buffer. And I use 2 methodologies, very different methodologies. One is we started with the Parsippany and Mountain Lakes municipal maps with identified boundaries of each property lot. I use commercially available software called FT2 to determine the areas of areas in question. As a result, it was determined that 23.5% of the area within 200 feet boundaries the right petition signed that requires a strong majority for vote. I also used another methodology that is used for hundreds of years, defining templates. The results were extremely consistent, so it's just to reaffirm that you guys need to have very strong majority to vote for it.
Excuse me, can you print your name? Can you please sign in?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Elliot Ruga. I'm the Senior Policy Analyst for the New Jersey Highlands Coalition. We're located in 508 Main Street in neighboring Boonton. Since 1988, we have represented our 70-member organizations in the preservation of the water and other natural and cultural resources of the Highlands region. And before I start, I'd just like to say that there is no shortage of work for sustainable development in the Highlands. We would like to remind you of the critical importance of protecting the public trust represented by Highlands resources for today and for future generations. The best available data source in the state to help appropriate land use decisions is what has been provided by the Highlands Council. And it should be considered whether or not a municipality chooses to conform to the Highlands Regional Master Plan, because simply it is the best available data. The 2004 Highlands Water Protection and Planning Act mandated that the Highlands Council analyze the entire region to determine the amount and type of human development and activity the ecosystems of the Highlands region could sustain while still maintaining the overall ecological values of the region. The state provides a variety of policy planning resources to help municipalities guide their land use decisions. There is a state plan policy map, which could be helpful in certain applications, but the State Planning Commission, which houses the mapping tool, has not officially adopted a map to supersede its 2001 state plan policy map. The Highlands Council mapping and data utilized far more sophisticated GIS and LiDAR technology that puts the 2001 state plan policy map back into the Stone Age. The New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection has current data, but DEP maps watershed features on a Huck 11 scale. The Highlands Council mapped the Highlands region on a Huck 14 scale. A Huck is simply a measurement of a common drainage basin. A Huck 14 is a smaller unit of a drainage basin than a Huck 11.
30 seconds, sir.
For example, several Huck 14s would combine to conform one Huck 11. So whereas DEP maps on a Huck 11 basis, the Highlands Council doubles the power of the microscope, so to speak, and maps resources at a higher level. The Highlands Council in 2007 issued its Water Resources Technical Report, determined the availability of the 183 Huck 14s that comprise the Highlands region, using a scientifically sound methodology to determine net water availability. For each of these little Hucks, they considered all the appropriate factors. They found that 50% of the Highlands...
Sorry, time's up, sir.
Okay, let me just finish and say
Sir,
this.
time's up. I'm sorry, sir.
The sub-watershed in which this project is located is in the highest degree of deficit, a deficit to the magnitude of 1 to 7.1 million gallons per day, a deficit level that is shared...
Sir, I have to cut you down. I'm sorry. 3 minutes, I have to stop.
There is
Sir, I have to
water.
stop you from speaking. Please stop. Thank you.
And to
Sir, we could do this all night.
Good evening. My name is Keith Merle. I work for a company called Princeton Hydro. Our office is located in Ringoes, New Jersey. I'm here on behalf of the Citizens for the Health and Welfare. In consideration of this plan, we've heard a lot about planning, adjacent land use, things that are nearby. What we haven't talked about is what this site can actually handle. Looking at the site, we're in an area of unique geology. We have glacial till on top of this site that's over top of sedimentary rocks. Both of those formations are huge in water production in the entire area. If you look at maps to the north and west, you can see water production tends to go down. If you look in the direction that this development is, water production goes up. That goes to the idea of these wellhead protection areas. Noting that the site, although not shown on any of the maps we saw tonight, is actually influenced by these tiers that's also influencing upwards of 5 production wells for the community in the area. And one of the main things that New Jersey Geologic Survey put forth when they started implementing wellhead protection areas was the excess use of rock salt. So either storing it or using large quantities of it will impact these wells more readily than most any other contaminant that we can actually put in that wellhead protection area. And keep in mind that those boundaries, it's not it may get there, it's going to get there. It's just how long does it take to get there. So we don't want to be putting development in compared commercial / residential compared to a office complex in terms of the use of rock salt is significantly higher intensity. You have residents that are going to leave 7 days a week. You're going to have commercial that wants to be open 7 days a week. A planned office type development wouldn't necessarily have that amount of use and then the need for rock salt in order to keep things safe. The other thing I want to talk about is those sediments on site are loose. And keep in mind that we're in the shadow of the Ramapo Fault. This fault is not some make-believe thing. It's still active. Many earthquakes that we feel are still part of the Ramapo Fault system. So we're looking to do a high-intensity development on top of loose sediments that when the earthquake comes, that's going to be big enough to impact us, we're really going to be setting ourselves up for a fall here. Keeping in mind that the ridge and the slope that runs along Interval Road is over 30 feet in height. So to start developing on top of this slope, especially residential units as described in everything we saw tonight, I feel like we're putting people at risk that we don't have to.
30 seconds, sir.
And to that end, the setback is not enough. We need much more setback. We have 300-foot setbacks from Route 46. Let's get 300 setbacks so we can save the geologic nature of the site. The other thing we want to keep in mind is retaining walls. I understand that there was discussion about height of retaining walls. The retaining walls in the site should definitely be limited to the 6 foot to prevent these excess walls from going into a site that's just going to be prone to problems when it comes to geology and geotechnical engineering. The other question is 150,000 square foot building. To fit on this site, you're going to have to level the site somehow. So you're either going to fill it up with dirt or you're going to dig it out. And I know the POD district doesn't allow mining. Well, digging out that amount is tantamount to mining.
Thank you.
Council members, good evening. My name is Gary Dean. I'm a principal with the firm of Dolan and Dean Consulting Engineers, representing Citizens for the Health, Safety, and Welfare, Inc. I'm a traffic engineer. I'm a licensed professional engineer in New Jersey, and over the past 30 years, I've spent the bulk of my career appearing before planning or zoning boards or governing bodies advocating traffic changes. In this particular instance, there are some significant deficiencies that I believe are appropriate to call to your attention that underscore the absence of material information that I believe it's essential for you to have before rendering a qualified decision. As Mr. Snikas indicated, large retail centers, if effectively regulated, are something you should consider. And he mentioned having safeguards in place to protect the interests of your citizens. You actually have an ordinance in Parsippany-Troy Hills, one of the more unique communities that has specific standards for accommodating traffic. In my opinion, the information that has been presented to the planning board and to this body don't meet those safeguards. This ordinance that you're considering does not meet the ordinance you have to provide adequate traffic flow. I believe that needs to be reconciled for this board, this governing body, to make an educated decision about the impacts of this project. Mr. Meth, the township traffic engineer, indicated that with certain improvements, the traffic impacts could be addressed. That to me is a question, not an answer. As an engineer, I believe it's my duty to provide boards with information so that you can make a decision. You need answers as to whether they can be addressed or whether it's purely speculation that they could be, but we don't know if they will be. Your own ordinance standards require that traffic move at a certain what's called level of service. It's a traffic engineer's report card. The information submitted by the petitioner shows that that will be at level of service F. We all know what that means as far as a report card is concerned. You also have the standards of the New Jersey Department of Transportation.
30 seconds, sir.
Thank you. The Department of Transportation requires that certain standards be met before a project be considered. And there's a provision in the DOT Access Management Code that says if a municipality should not consider a rezoning if those standards cannot be met. And I believe it's incumbent upon this board, this council, to have answers that demonstrate that this project will not have a detrimental impact to the community, because the few answers that do exist show that this is not a feasible project. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Peter Steck. I'm a planning consultant that's working for the Citizens for Health, Safety, and Welfare. I produced a report dated September 16th, which I believe the council members have. I have also produced a second report that I will leave with the board that verifies that the signers of the petition do represent the owners of more than 20% of the acreage within 200 feet, and I'll bring that up in a moment. But just to highlight my memo, my conclusions, working backwards, is that there are procedural defects associated with this ordinance. It is capricious, arbitrary, and unreasonable, and it constitutes improper spot zoning. This process was not a comprehensive process. You had a developer that approached the municipality saying, I want to build this. The developer was cut back slightly, but basically the zoning that is being contemplated looked just at this property, and it oddly coincided with what the developer wished to do. The conclusion of your consultants is that there's a compelling alternative to this planned office development district that's there now. The purpose of having zoning consistent with the master plan is that it's comprehensive. You look at a lot of things rather than just piece of property. And in my opinion, you don't look at the general goals. Your planning board looked at the general goals in 2004, and based on those general goals, it concluded that this property should only be for office use, that it ought to be part of a large planned development that includes 132 acres, that they're going to discourage big boxes, and that they're going to discourage multifamily. Now, that's my analysis of the master plan. To say somehow that it's balanced, in my opinion, is like saying, what part of the word no don't you understand? There is a requirement of buffering, and that's not only for dissimilar uses, but it's uses of different intensities. This master plan and the prior master plan all talked about buffering, and when this planned office development district that is now going to be decimated was put in, there was a commitment to the neighbors to buffer them
30 seconds, sir.
With substantial buffers. This is, in my opinion, substantially inconsistent with the plan. It produces more impervious coverage, which is bad for the wellhead issues. I believe the fiscal impact statement is biased when you stray from the average per capita ratio. In my opinion, this does not advance public purposes. You look at the purposes of the ordinance, they talk about mass transit. You can stay there for a long time and try to find the bus or the train. It's not there. This is not a mass transit type of location. These uses aren't integrated. These are essentially two separate zones that, in my opinion...
Okay, sir, your time's up. Thank you.
Good evening. Kurt Hardenberg, 85 Redgate Road, Parsippany. I think there's some voodoo economics going on a little bit. First of all, the gentleman mentioned the building permit money. Building permit money goes to the building department. It's not revenue. Sewer connection fees go to the sewer department. Once again, that's not revenue. That's connection fees. That goes to the sewer department. So it's not revenue for the town. It's not taxes. Okay? And also, I'm a subcontractor, and I also do a lot of side jobs. I work at Huntington Bridge all the time in Parsippany. There are so many children there you could not believe. Before you vote, you should find out how many children there are. 3/4 to half of those are rentals. There's 2-3 children in every single unit there. I have at least 20 customers there. I'm there every day. So I know for a fact either it's overcrowded or this gentleman's way, way, way wrong. He's talking about 180 bedrooms, but 142 people. It doesn't add up. If there's 180 bedrooms, how can you only have 142 people? Then why are they building 3 bedrooms? Why not build 2 and sell extra? I'm also the manager for Intervale Garden Apartments. Because of the town's new stacking ordinances, everything has changed. Every single day, I turn away people with children. Every single day. I have 72 bedroom units. I probably have 70 children. How's he talking 60 and 23 children? The numbers don't add up. And this is what I do for a living. I do rentals for a living. I turn people away, good people, in this town every single day because of the stacking ordinances. So you got voodoo economics on one hand, and on the other hand, the children don't add up. If the children don't add up, then the revenue doesn't add up. Then the taxes don't add up. One thing leads to another. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Excuse me.
Nicholas Holmiak, Lake Hiawatha, Citizens for Safe, Healthy, and Welfare. This rezoning is against the land use laws, U.S. EPA, New Jersey DPA, wetlands laws, regulations, and studies. RDR, the developer, did thoroughly and deliberately with intention to undermine and subvert these laws and regulations and principles in that they diminish the importance of the landscape they had chosen for their unnecessary development. RDR shopped around for a consulting report. There are at least 3 until they found one that intentionally distorted the relationship of the property to the adjacent wetlands, the transition zone that exists upon it, and the value of the hydrologic systems present there. Their eco-science report dated 2/15/13 is flawed in at least 3 aspects that can be identified and explained. This report has their property existing in a vacuum. If this rezone goes under the Title 40 laws, it is not an appropriate location. It will lead to the degradation of the environment through improper land use, and it will be a waste of public funds used in the Troy Brook study. The Troy Brook study of 2006, stormwater management, was conducted with grant money to benefit us all. In this report, the Waterview Park office complex is cited specifically under address of loss of biodiversity. How could the developer not have factored in the results of this study, or the planning board?
This study puts the property in its proper place within the Troy Brook wetland system. How can you border on adjacent wetlands, be part of open waters, and have a transition zone on the property and allege no impacts will occur? To destroy this beautiful remaining American landscape is immoral. To persist is sociopathic behavior.
Maybe like that.
Yeah, can you get it?
I'll try that. Stephanie DiToronto Eckert, 320 East Halsey Road, Parsippany. I've lived in Parsippany many years. As a child, I saw the transition from farmland and open space to office buildings and apartment complexes. This progress also brought many other changes that remain to this day, including increased congestion, increased runoff, and a sense that Parsippany didn't have a real direction except for wanting to develop. The master plan helped rein in development, but over the last few years, I believe a tendency towards unrestricted growth has crept back in. This includes RD Realty's plan to rezone and develop the last remaining portion of the Dodge Tract, also known as Waterview. Growing up in Parsippany, I also had the privilege of experiencing firsthand the natural beauty of this land. Over 130 acres owned by Geraldine Rockefeller Dodge and known as the Dodge Tract, this land was a refuge for wildlife and a source of delight for children and adults. Ironically, townspeople were often assured that this land would remain for the enjoyment of residents, kept close to its natural state, perhaps incorporating a recreational intercultural component. That's not just from my memory and others' memories, it's also cited in the book None Outsings Parsippany, which was published by the Parsippany Board of Education in 1976. However, as years passed, it became apparent that financial gain for a few, combined with the clout of developers, would result in the largest portion of the Dodge Tract becoming covered with office buildings. Although no longer pristine, at least that development had only included office space, not retail or residential. RDR's plan for Waterview is not about Whole Foods coming to Parsippany. It's about a developer wanting to change the law so they can build their big box development that may or may not eventually include Whole Foods as one of the tenants. At a time when other leaders around the state and the country are encouraging a focus on local businesses, I find it disheartening to see our current mayor move backwards by appearing to push for this big box development. As elected Parsippany officials, you do not represent RDR, Whole Foods, Target, or Walmart. You represent the people, including those who in great numbers have voiced their outrage at this plan, outrage at increased traffic, and outrage at the potential for increased flooding and increased crime. I ask you to listen to the people, especially those who would be most directly, negatively, and permanently impacted by this proposed development. Mr. Carifi, Mr. DiPiero, Mr. Ferrara, Mr. Nelson, and Mr. Stanton, I ask you to please vote no. Thank you very much.
Phil Kornreich, Forest Drive, Parsippany. I first want to thank Council President Stanton for allowing us the public to speak. I've been a resident of Parsippany for 35 years. I've lived in Intervale Heights for 35 years. And I am a registered voter, and I do vote every election. It's a family neighborhood. It's a great neighborhood. It's called Forest Drive for a reason. It's not 18-wheeler drive or noise pollution drive. And this project just, it doesn't fit. It's not right. It's not the right time. It's not the right project. You know, we're not opposed to progress in town, but this is really a bad project. It's a bad deal. Developers are in it to make money. We know that. They're going to make a lot of money. They're going to leave. And, you know, the people in our neighborhood, the people in the whole township are still going to be here. You're going to be here. And, you know, it's traffic. There's so many things that are going to be wrong. And one of the things is the people that did the presentations tonight, if they didn't do introductions, I would have really thought they were the developers. You know, it just didn't make any sense. And, you know, questions weren't answered by Mr. Meth about Sunday traffic, which is going to be, right now, there's no traffic at all on Sundays. And that's just one of the things. But I'm asking you, you know, as a council, who represent us in Parsippany, to please vote no. Thank you.
Ashley Cornrick from 70 Forest Drive, and I'm going to tell you some of the reasons why I do not want you to build those extra unnecessary stores and townhouses. One of the first reasons are that the schools are already really crowded, and that they're probably going to add a third class in my grade if there's more kids moving in because of the houses that you're going to build, and I do not want that. Also, there's going to be a lot of litter and pollution around my house, and nobody wants that around here because it's going to be a lot, and it's bad for the environment. So I don't want you to build it.
I don't think I can follow that. I'm out of here. My name is Frank Gingaro. I'm from 27 Homer Street in Parsippany. I've been a resident here for 50 years. And I was at the last few meetings and even at this meeting, and it's not a job issue here. This is an issue about our lives, our families, our friends, our neighbors, the safety of our community. I live on Troy Brook. I don't need any more water running into Troy Brook. I mean, a few months ago, we had that rain for 20 minutes. It was halfway up my backyard. And there's just so much going around our neighborhood there in Hills of Troy that I just don't think this is going to help. And also, that's definitely going to be a cut-through for any traffic that happens with this development. And it's going to be a cut-through for a lot of developments that are right around that area. And it's unsafe for the kids. And I just think it's the wrong thing to do. I mean, I don't need all 3 minutes, but I'm just begging you up there, please, take care of us and vote no. It's the right thing to do. I know some of you up there, and you were great people. I've known you for a long time. I've worked with you, for some of you in campaigns when I was in high school, and I thought you were the best people. And just stay that way and vote no on this, please. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Gary Rowe, Local 464A, United Food and Commercial Workers Union. Whole Foods is a big box operator. They bring more problems to the community than advantages. Most of the employees come from outside of the community and don't provide jobs for the people in the community. There's also problems with the crime, the shoplifting, and with local vendors being put out of business. You should give this a good look and vote against it. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Forrest Pauling.
Sir, take it out. Take it out.
Hello, my name's Forrest Pauling, and I live over in 4 Glenbrook Drive. I moved here into Parsippany back in the beginning of 2011, so I'm a relatively new resident, but I have a lot of skin in the game. Like many people here in Parsippany, I pay over 5 figures of taxes, and me and my wife earn a pretty decent living. We looked at these reports, and they look very skewed. 500 some jobs turns into 285 jobs. Are those jobs of people commuting from Patterson or Newark, some place that wants to work retail work? Because I know for a fact that when me and my wife leave, Parsippany, if this has to go through, because we can't accept the quality of life that this brings with it, because we have choices, But before we go, I'll take the hit. I'll take the hit. If that's what it has to be, I mean, if you guys want to vote for a developer versus us in the community, I get it. I mean, this is what it is. But like I said, in August, I had a water filter. It was pure brown, and I showed it to you, and it was 30 days in my house. This one is from last week. From the last meeting to this meeting, it is pretty brown. I'm just wondering what the quality of the water is going to be like once this big strip mall, these 60-row homes, overglorified townhouses come through the neighborhood. I'm just wondering what the water quality is going to be like then. I feel for my neighbors, I really do, and I hope that the board comes to their senses and really, works for the taxpayers that are paying your salary. It's not RDR that's paying your salary. It's us. Us here in Parsippany are paying your salary. Not RDR, not the temporary union workers that are working from Patterson or outside communities. It's us folks here that live and have to deal with this traffic off of 80, 287. I see it every morning. 80, you go down 80 and try to get on to 287 in the morning, that thing's backed up to 202. Where's that traffic study? There is no traffic studies. All these reports are flawed. Nobody did an independent analysis. It's almost like, let's pick RDR to come here and, who consultant will write us the best report and put this thing through? I mean, it is just a joke. I am really disgraced at what I've seen here in this community. I mean, this is just pathetic. But if you want to come over for a drink of water, I'll turn off the filter and you can each have a drink.
Good evening, my name is Andrew Lippett. I'm the resident at 2 Craven Road in Mountain Lakes. I also am the owner of a technology company that is at Lanadex Plaza in Parsippany, where I employ numerous local residents. As a resident of Mountain Lakes, I've heard it mentioned around that we don't belong here, and that this is an issue that only affects Parsippany. Well, I take exception to that, as my property sits on a high tract of land directly adjacent to this site and overlooking the entire project area. As a result of your decision today, it affects me and my family physically, emotionally, environmentally, and economically. This is an example how decisions can have unintended consequences when they're rushed through without taking the time to properly evaluate the long-term impact they may have on everyone. I believe you've received the letter from the borough government body in our town objecting to this project's impact on Mountain Lakes residents. And it may strike you how unusual that is to receive such a letter. I think it reflects the importance of this issue to people in the larger community. As the elected representatives of the people you serve and those whom your decision may impact beyond your borders, you have a sacred duty to look beyond expediency, beyond election year gimmicks, and short-term benefits, and understand how your decisions may affect generations to come. Rarely do elected officials in municipal settings face decisions with such long-term ramifications, and I hope you appreciate the importance of tonight's vote. Trendy food stores come and go. Construction jobs dissipate. Big box, low-wage jobs are transient and fleeting. The destruction of unimproved land, however, has a forever impact on the environment and the very nature and culture of a community. The values you place on the assets of your community send a signal to the public about what the entire community values as a whole. Parsippany rightly promotes its designation as one of the nicest places to live in America. However, I'm sure that designation has more to do with the beauty it offers than the number of parking spaces in shopping centers. I'm not against development, nor am I against progress, but no governing body can make decisions in a vacuum. The town's master plan recognized that open space, setbacks, and zoning limits regarding density were important to overall quality of life, not just today, but in the future. Your decision to change that focus, to embrace an elusive and vague promise of hoped-for tax revenue and permanent jobs boom, is not supported by the many studies that show this issue. I want to remind you of a pivotal scene in the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It's very relevant to what's happening here. At one point, Jim Stewart says, "Great principles don't get lost once they come to light. They're right here. You just have to see them again." Gentlemen, this is your Mr. Smith moment. How are you going to respond?
Just a reminder, if anyone didn't sign in, please come up, sign in.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Mark Miller. I live on 115 Preston Road. I grew up here. I wore my Angry Bird shirt to let everybody know that there's going to be a lot of angry birds who are going to not have a house because all those trees that they use for their homes are going to be cut down by RDR developers. And a question for RDR developer about the flooding issue. You claim that there's no flooding of an issue. How do you address the issue of the cumulative runoff that will be increased and will be, that will no longer be going into the soil and will now be entering the Passaic River watershed. And should we not include the communities of Fairfield and other people who are downstream, who are going to be in more flood-prone areas, because that number of gallons of water that would have ordinarily gone into the soil is now going to be added into the Passaic River watershed. And how many times are they going to have to close 2 bridges roads or have people flooded out down there with additional water coming in? So maybe it doesn't affect us here, but it also affects people downstream and increases the general flooding of these rivers when you already have storm events that are going to cause that to happen anyway. We're just making the problem worse and compounding it. So everything also the steepness of the slope was mentioned. It's extremely steep, and when you have an impermeable surface with all this runoff going down, it's going to come into the watershed a lot faster and in a lot greater volume, and it's going to have to go somewhere. So you're going to probably have more flooding on the 46, more ponding of water on the roadways, more likelihood of accidents. Combine that with more traffic, you're creating a real disastrous situation. You're going to create more auto accident injuries and just problems with traffic, flooding all at the same time. Another issue with the school overcrowding is, I think you can ask anyone who's in the social sciences field, that more overcrowding leads to more bullying. So when you put more people in the schools, you're also going to have more likelihood of bullying. And we know what the outcomes of that are. None of them are pleasant. So I would really ask people on the City Council to join Mr. Karifi, who was the only person who had the courage to stand up to RDR developers and ask for questions about what they're doing that's wrong and some of the fallacies in their studies. We're familiar with deception.
30 seconds, sir.
This happens across the country. And again, I wanted to remind people about the town of Bell, California. And remember what happened with the city council there. There was a lot of corruption going on, and they ended up getting arrested. And we'd hate to see Parsippany become the Bell of the East Coast, but it looks like things could be headed in that direction. I think we should all look up the term corporate kickbacks on the internet and see what that means. Y'all have a good night. Thank you.
Please sign in. You didn't sign in.
Could you sign in, sir?
There you go. Thank you.
My name is Nancy Duterte, 41 Lake Drive, Mountain Lakes. In the last couple of decades, Parsippany has chosen to develop 99% of its land and only protect 1%. That's all that's left. Maybe it's time to look at municipal planning differently than in the past, because progress is no longer what it used to be. New retail malls and office complexes were beneficial for many years, but today we're overdeveloped. The old assumptions about the costs and benefits aren't true anymore. Uncontrolled economic development has become a liability. Too many shopping centers are redundant. We have only a limited amount of dollars to spend on local goods and services. If you build more retail, you're just taking away from Peter to pay Paul. It is now parasitic. You are now eating your own economic flesh. It is time for a new strategy, a new way to think about municipal planning. The Parsippany Master Plan is very clear. It specifically discourages big box stores, but the proposed ordinance would permit a 150,000 square foot store. That's the size of the largest Target and Costco big box mega stores in the country. Parsippany doesn't need another big box. Within 20 miles of here, you have 6 Targets, 6 Walmarts, and 9 Kmarts, and countless others. RDR is the national developer of Walmart, Kmart, and Target stores. The developer doesn't care about our community. He's in it for the short term, we're in it for the long term. Big box stores don't create jobs, it's an illusion. In fact, for every 1 job created, 1.4 jobs are lost elsewhere in the community. If you accept your planner's assumption that 285 new jobs will be created, then just know you will lose 399 jobs. That's a net loss of 114 jobs to Parsippany. Is that progress? Big box stores offer substandard wages. Target offers lower wages than Walmart. These workers end up relying on government services just to survive. Further, big box stores don't generate new business, they simply steal it from existing businesses. As a result, local businesses are forced to lay off workers and close their doors. That's a new loss in terms of revenue for Parsippany. But big box has even more hidden costs. It brings increased crime, traffic, and infrastructure problems. Is that progress? Your planner admits this ordinance is inconsistent with your own master plan. He says you should ignore that fact and vote in favor of the ordinance anyway because the office market is depressed. Funny thing, he never mentions the retail market's also depressed. He says this rezoning plan will add new goods and services, but he doesn't tell you this retail market is already saturated
30
with
seconds.
identical goods and services. This ordinance simply promotes economic cannibalism. This is the tipping point where progress is not progress anymore. It's time for a new strategy for Parsippany. This ordinance is inconsistent with the master plan and inconsistent with the will of the people. I urge you to vote against it. Thank you.
Please sign in.
Ma'am, did you sign in?
Manoj, I'm from Manoj Shade. I'm from 69 Forest Drive. I'm Manoj. I'm from 69 Forest Drive. That's the property adjacent to this proposed development. Okay. I cannot claim that I have any expertise in doing a traffic study or an environment study or whatever. But everything that I wanted to know, I came to know from this single report by Burgess Associates that is submitted to our planning board. The two-line summary of this report is that this development is against sound planning principles laid out by the planning board, not planning board, the planning committee of 2004 and 2010. But it's okay because we have buffers. That's the only excuse. Everything else it says is that this development is against the principles that are laid out in our planning. So just to read out a few, right? So the planning portion says do not allow any multifamily housing and townhouses because there is already a large percentage of our housing stock devoted to these housing types. And yet, this proposal has exactly the same. It has townhouses being proposed. It says no big box retail, and yet this one has a big box retail. The report admits that the analysis of availability of water, such a development, will be required at the time of proposed development. So when is that? If we approve this today, when are we going to see whether there is enough water for it? Okay. There is an objective laid out in our planning board that says to ensure that the development within the township does not conflict with the development and general welfare of adjacent municipalities. And I understand that Mountain Lakes just voted 5-0 effectively to tell us is effectively against this plan, or saying at least that we need a majority to pass this plan. Everything that I read in this report said that this proposed development is not sound, is not good for us. So let's just, I know today as leaders, our leaders, you're going to make a decision that is going to impact us, this community for generations, and I'm invested into this community for generations. So
30 seconds, sir.
I'm asking you to say no to this inconsiderate, blatant land exploitation, say no to this additional stress on our town's water, police, traffic, and school resources. And let's just not fall to this pretend safeguards in the proposal. There are none. There is risk. Let's not take risk. Let's say no, and let's not regret this for years to come. Thank you.
Pat Pataccia, 182 Hawkins Avenue. I just got a couple of points to make. There are many inconsistencies. They far outnumber the consistencies. When we go that far away from our master plan, that's ridiculous. We have a master plan for a reason. I ask you this, what happens if this folds? We have another empty building just sitting around for years. 1.137 annually in tax revenue. That's until they come to you the following year and ask you to give them a tax break and decrease it. 285 new positions. Most businesses of these types bring in their own, as far as managers and the big shots. They bring in their own. We will not be receiving any of those jobs. What we will be receiving is the minimum wage jobs, which we don't need in this town. What we need are jobs that are going to get some of our residents back working and supporting their families. Many people have lost their jobs in these last 6 years. I don't think a family man or woman can support a family on a minimum wage salary. And I understand the union guys coming up here and wanting to have jobs. And that's fine. I mean, that's fine and dandy, but union jobs, they're out there. Maybe not as often as they were, but they are out there and a lot of them are working. We have to concentrate on the people that aren't working. And we also have to sit here and, you know, we got to think about what we're doing. And one big question I have is, why wasn't the Parsippany Police Chief, Phillips, asked to prepare a report on the crime, on emergency, and the traffic impact? Why wasn't he asked to do that? He could have done that.
30
Okay.
seconds, Pat.
My last part. Thank you. I finally made it. I want you, and I ask you, with all sincerity, you all know where my heart is. Do what is best for Parsippany and its residents. Don't do what's best because somebody knows somebody. We've got a developer. Developers, we can't. We have to worry about us, our residents, and what our town looks like. Thank you.
Evening, Council. Andrew Springer, 649 Littleton Road. I've been up here before. And I guess the point is, what we're here tonight is to figure out what Parsippany needs, is really what it boils down to. So one point, one question, I'll get out of here. Our discussed ordinance tonight provides for 4 uses plus an all of the above, but do we need them? Use 1, a bank. There's currently a TD Bank, corner of Waterview and Parsippany Boulevard. Use 2, restaurant plus other. Eastbound, go 46, Fuddruckers, McDonald's, Wendy's. Got enough. That's just on 46. Eastbound, within 10 minutes drive from ends of Parsippany, you can go to several department stores, Walmart's, Target's, via Rockaway, Cedar Knolls, East Hanover, Fairfield, Riverdale. If you're looking for hardware, Rockaway, in town here, Pinebrook, Riverdale again. And since everybody loves the Whole Foods, that it's what we need, another supermarket, well, I feel it necessary to mention that we're near or have an A&P, Food Town, ShopRite, Stop and Shop, Pathmark, King's, Aldi's. There's a convenience store right next door. More little places to get your groceries. I feel we're buried in groceries right about now. Plus 8 additional specialty food stores, Indian, Chinese, Asian, etc. It's a bunch. I live near a couple. Pretty much drowning in them. All right, pretty quick, my one question. The town just paid a bunch of money to make Waterview all nice, pretty. We got sidewalks. I sat through having half a road for half a week. Why are we tearing it up? Okay, spend more money. Sure, spend their money. I think we spent our money. In summation, we the residents of Parsippany-Troy Hills, we can put lipstick on a pig, but should we have to?
I'm Steve Arnold. I live at 4 Craven Road in Mountain Lakes, and my property is 300 feet from the lot in question. I'm also at 370 feet elevation, like Mr. Lippett, who was up here before. I've lived in that lot for 34 years, so a little longer than since the POD ordinance went in. I was involved in that discussion. I want to mention that I did write a couple of letters to the council. One was dated September 4th, and another one was dated yesterday, September 16th. And I hope that the council has or will read those through. I also hope that the council has read through the ordinance that exists and understands the clauses, especially the clauses A through H that protect about buffers and building heights and those various requirements of the current zoning. And also the master plan and its goals and objectives. I do want to point out that, well, I heard what Mr. Snikes referred to as inconsistencies with master plan or consistencies, and he mentioned some of the clauses, some of the goals and objectives. So for some of them, he said that the plan actually furthers them, which is really strange, by making the buffer zones smaller. That furthers that objective that he was referring to. By taking away buffers, by doing all those things, nothing is furthered. If the land was a desert, yes, then this ordinance furthers those things, but it's not. It's a land that has very good features. Now, he also failed to mention some other objectives and goals in the master plan. Number 7, to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of uses and open space, both public and private, in a manner compatible with the character of the township and the environment. He didn't mention that one. I think it's relevant to this zoning ordinance. Number 10, to promote the conservation of historic sites and districts, open space, energy resources, and valuable natural resources, and to prevent urban sprawl and degradation of the environment through improper use of land. Again, he didn't mention that one either. For goals, number 7, to encourage new development to take into account the aesthetic character. This is aesthetic, the land as it is now. Number 8, to ensure that traffic and pedestrian circulation issues are, those are all things he didn't address. I'm also going to hand in a topographical map for you to look at to understand the current ordinance, because it shows where the 360-foot elevation is, which is critical. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eileen Hoffman, and I live at 47 Forest Drive. We bought our home in April of 2007. My husband grew up in this town. He went through the whole school system. We decided to settle here because we felt that this town had so much to offer our young children. Good schools, a great recreation program, and we loved the feel of the town, especially our neighborhood. When we purchased our home, we were told that the area behind our house, Waterview, was zoned for office space. We bought knowing that we would have woods and an office complex as our backyard neighbors. Since we purchased our home, the economy has changed. Property values have decreased, our home value has decreased. I can live with that. However, I cannot live with any further decreasing the value of my homes and my neighbors' homes because of the building of a big box store and a grocery store and whatever else might be built there. I love our neighborhood. I love living in this nice residential community. Please consider the overall character of our township and the needs of our community when you're voting. These take precedence over the desires of a developer. Trading potential tax revenue for the desirability of living in this town is not a good idea. I'm asking you to look at the long-term, big picture. Rezoning Waterview will diminish the value of our homes in our town as a whole. Do we really want to end up living in a retail wasteland? Can we justify paving over this land to develop even more when we already have so many vacant buildings? Remember, once this is done, it cannot be undone. It takes years and years to regrow forest land. We will never be able to rebuild that beautiful ridge off of Intervale. Rezoning would cause enormous negative impact and irreversible harm to our community and the environment. Please consider the people of Parsippany tonight when you vote. Thank you.
No, just give me 1 sec, not to cut anyone off. The one person at the end of the line right now will be the last speaker for tonight. For tonight, that should be 10:30, if not a little after.
Good.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jill Cerullo. I live 4 Doremus Drive. I know some of you, and other of you I know just from your signs being on my lawn that I did vote for you. Tonight, I'm representing not just myself, but these 3 people who are my heart. They're my 3 children. I love my neighborhood, and I love living in Parsippany. I'm a Little Vikings mom. My husband coaches. We live, we breathe Little Vikings. I'm an active member of our PTA, and my children will be the most affected by you doing this to my neighborhood. Right now, we can't leave our cul-de-sac from 7:30 in the morning till 9 o'clock in the morning, or from 4 o'clock till 6 or 7 o'clock during the week because of the traffic. Forest Drive is a cut-through. We have a small little park that I walk my children to almost every single day. That this will now impact Saturdays and Sundays of us walking our kids in our neighborhood. Every weekend, after school, we have easily 10, 12 kids that go from house to house. With the increase of the people driving, the crime, the people working in these buildings is going to affect my life and these 3 children. And this is what I'm here tonight to represent. So tonight when you vote, I hope you vote no to this, for not just the people that are here tonight, but for all the kids that this represents. Thank you.
My name is Sri Menon, 6 Pine Tree Place, Parsippany. The idea of developing this particular area is not just started recently, right? It's been going on for a long time. So in the meeting just before the primaries, I had actually asked what the options of the township buying this property. And I didn't actually get an answer because I was asking, there was a referendum that actually was asking Parsippany people whether they're willing to spend about $17 million to actually turf the fields. So can we actually have a referendum to see whether we can actually buy this property back from this developer, because it's been going on for 20-odd years. I don't want to come back here every 4 years, a couple of years, to actually go through the same exercise again and again. Thank you.
My name is David Kaplan. I live at 263 Intervale Road. Before I begin, Councilman DePiro, happy anniversary. I live in Parsippany. I'm here tonight to go on record voicing my opposition to this egregious and inconsiderate ordinance. It has been made clear from the beginning that the residents who live closest to the last remaining 26 acres of the Waterview property have been overlooked. And let me share with you one example. You all know that the news of this proposed development broke about 1.5 years, if not 2 years ago. However, the developer never once asked to meet with the community. After months of literally begging, we were granted an almost 60-minute meeting right before a council meeting a few weeks ago. And I want you to know that, interestingly, during this meeting, we were repeatedly told that all possible concessions had already been made and there was nothing left to give. However, by the end of the meeting, we were being told, I can get you 50 feet here, or I can move this and add another 25 feet to your buffer there. So which is it? Is there nothing left to give? Or is the developer holding his cards close in order to maintain as much of his profit at our expense as he possibly can? I would hate to think that we're being used as pawns in order for Mr. Forgione to make an enormous profit for himself. He may be a businessman, but I live in Parsippany. I'm raising my beautiful children here. This is my home. This is my biggest investment. I do not care about his profit. Council members, how can you vote in favor of this project when the developer is not giving us a straightforward answer or straightforward information? In addition, if the developer has room to spare along the buffer, then the current ordinance, as it is written, should be changed to reflect the accurate distance. If the ordinance reads 85 feet, but there's room for 100 feet, why would you pass an ordinance that it doesn't fully protect the people you are up there to represent? If there's more buffer to give, then by golly, give it and stop playing games with us. Write it into the ordinance. Another flaw of this ordinance that has been grossly overlooked is that there is no stipulation restricting delivery times. With 194,000 square feet of retail, you can be assured that deliveries will be round the clock. The ShopRite on Route 46, through a township ordinance, has restricted hours on delivery so the neighboring residents are afforded at least some peace and quiet throughout the night. Currently, the ordinance before you allows for deliveries at all hours. Are you truly prepared to pass an ordinance that doesn't consider the fact that we do not want to be hearing trucks backing up at 3 in the morning?
30 seconds.
Thank you. Would you vote to pass this ordinance in your backyard? If you wouldn't subject yourself to this kind of noise, then how can you possibly do it to us? Every single one of you sitting on that dais knows how controversial this ordinance is. Every single one of you knows how hard certain people are pushing to get it passed. Every single one of you knows that your attorney has spoken more on this matter than anyone else. If I were you, I'd be less concerned about your neighbors in Mountain Lakes being upset by this proposal and more concerned that your attorney seems to be so invested in its successful passage. Before I conclude, I would like to remind you that the developer has provided reports that omit key evidence. The developer has funded a BS survey that asks skewed questions in order to elicit predictable outcomes. The township's planner's own reports are clouded by a conflict of interest. There are simply too many questions, doubts, suspicions to make this a simple vote, and if you cannot vote with 100% confidence that everything is on the up and up, then don't play with our lives and vote no.
Good evening. My name is Rhonda Brock Pritchard. I live at 11 Glen Road in the Intervale Heights development. Rather than reiterate some of the facts and figures of the previous speakers, I choose instead to appeal to you, Mayor Barbario, and to each of you council members or members here tonight. Please do not be that mayor. Please don't be that council that in 2013 said, we've heard everything and we feel like we've made the best decision and we're getting rid of this beautiful tract of land. I've only been a New Jerseyan for 25 years. I lived in the South my whole life. When I used to come up here and visit my father-in-law, my previous father-in-law who lived in Mountain Lakes, I used to look at the neighborhood that I now live in, and I would think, gosh, if I ever had to move to New Jersey, I would want to live there because it's just so beautiful. And I feel like that it's such a gorgeous enclave of peace and tranquility and serenity in a really overdeveloped state. We purposely chose this house and raised our family there. When we moved here, my children were 4 and 1.5. I had no other family here. We've already heard and seen many facts and statistics about vacant retail space here in this area. I just am going to ask that you not allow these developers to forever cut down trees and destroy wildlife habitats for the sake of new retail area and possibly some new residential area. As a closing comment, I do just want to say a little more about my family, because I am, after all, appealing to you as fellow township residents. I'm a mother to 2 grown children, Kevin and Susan. They went to Intervale School. I was a room mother. I was an ice cream lady, and then I went on to become PTA president at Intervale. When my kids went to Brookline, I went to Brookline with them, and I became PTA president there as well, and then the Township Council of PTAs. I always felt that my opinion and values and hard work ethic mattered in this town. Now that my children have graduated from PHHS right here, and they've gone on to college and graduated, they're like working members in New York City. They're, successful, and I owe so much to this town. I teach I'm actually a teacher here now for 12 years in this very school. I start work at 7:30 in the morning. I've been here to all of these meetings, and I feel this strongly about it. I teach my students that they each are important and that they make a difference. And our very own Institute for Political and Legal Education class here at the Hills, last year the students debated, should we develop Waterview or should we not? They voted overwhelmingly in the debate not to develop Waterview. I'm going to implore you, please, do not allow these developers to change our township and alter our future forever. Thank you very much.
My name is Raymond Webb, 50 Hillside Lane, Parsippany. It's funny that that master plan has Hillside Lane as a public road on it, but it doesn't mean anything. I guess I'm going to share you my personal testimony that this planning board and the previous town councils
address the council, please, sir.
have done to me and my family because they want to run it like a business. They don't care about people. They just want to make whatever they got to do what they got to do. But the thing they did, they passed an approval for the IBEW in 2005 and declared my road, my access, a private road. And then they restricted the width to 20 feet, actually landlocking my property. And besides them knowing the truth, they said, well, what is he going to do? And since then, I have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on putting in applications to improve my property, to fighting in court, and all they do is deceive and change the whatever it means, and it's like they have no integrity, and their law is whatever kind of illusion that they can create. Could you imagine the law says this, it's a public road, but they can say anything they want because they did something. You remember when the governor tried to bust up the planning board 7 years ago? And he got the planning board attorney? But nobody wants to be accountable for the actions he did.
Sir, you have to address the ordinance. That's what we're up for, the ordinance itself.
And this is what we need to do. They have to follow the letter of the law because we cannot trust the planning board. We can't trust what motivates them, and we can't even trust what the people that work for the town, these professionals, engineers. Mr. Sikes, he signed off on my neighbor for 6 variances and never had an open meeting, so I never even knew what they were doing. Here they're tearing my neighbor, tearing everything down, cutting off my access, and they never told me. So they have no integrity. They're going to tell you what you want to hear, and then they're going to change it. And they're going to do whatever they want to do, and they're not going to care. Thank you.
Hello, Allison Danchak, 41 Forest Drive. Sorry? Okay, Allison Danchak, 41 Forest Drive. The developer purchased this property knowing full well that this was owned as a POD, with an obvious strategy to come to the town and ask for a zoning change using some loophole that will allow them to get an overlay. Why? Obvious this proposed project is maximized to its highest potential so that he can make the most profit as possible. The feasibility study that was conducted by Burgess Associates, presented tonight, indicates that this massive project will generate $245,000 in more revenue for the municipality compared to your $69 million budget. What does that mean? It's immaterial. We all know that. The analysis also tells us it's not consistent with the master plan. It's been addressed. Mr. Snickus was nice enough to tell you there's also a loophole to get around that. Does the revenue, he did not include in the analysis that what's the revenue stream from an actual office development? Is it more than this? Is it less than this? Is it the same as this? What's the impact from the office development on traffic, on this, on that? This analysis doesn't take anything of the current zoning into account. Finally, the impact to our environment, the town, crime, my neighborhood, my property taxes, the quality of life in Parsippany just doesn't seem worth $245,000. There are more than 25 houses on Forest Drive. $245,000 is roughly the taxes we pay for 25 or 26 residents in this town. We're here. We don't want it. Please vote no.
Mike Polsinelli, 50 Parsippany Drive, or Parsippany Road, Business Agent, Local 102, IBEW. I represent 3,500 electricians. I have roughly 400 between retirees, spouses, dependents, and working members of my local right now that reside in Parsippany and vote. We pay $18,000 a quarter in taxes for our building. We did hear the planners, the professional planners speak tonight, and then we heard the residents, professional people spoke tonight. I've been in this business for 35 years. We hire a lot of professionals in our business. The money that was spent tonight for the residents, for the professionals, is roughly $50,000. And my question to the planning board and the council, who's paying that money? I don't think it's the residents paying that money. I think it's...
Quiet in the audience, please. Everybody had their 3 minutes. Let him have his. Thank you.
My question to you is...
Ordinance on.
And it was against the ordinance,
Please
sir.
be quiet in the audience.
My question to the council is who's paying for the professionals for the ordinance that they're representing? Thank you.
Jackie Bay, Mountain Lakes, 430 Morris Avenue. Isn't it lucky I get to go last because I'm a vice president with Citizens, so I can tell you who's paying for that because I've sat through every meeting. That money was raised by the good people of Parsippany and Mountain Lakes and things that Friday night happy hours, jump in the lake. We've had social media campaigns, we've had postcards,
ma'am,
we've had direct mail. Every nickel of that was raised the absolute hard way. There was not $1 from a political party, from a governing body, not even 50 cents. We worked really hard to raise every nickel of that money, and to suggest anything different is insulting. We are here and we raise that money because we have something to say and we feel passionately about it. All right, that is not what I wanted to talk to you about tonight.
Sir, this is the last speaker.
I want to share with you. Yeah.
This is the last speaker.
You said 10:30.
Go ahead.
My 3 minutes starts now. I would like to share with you a quote from Realtor.com about how property values are determined. It says, quote, "Keep in mind future zoning plans. A home may have a higher value when it is first built and wonderful green space views. But if zoning allows for that green space to turn into a shopping mall 10 years down the road, you can expect the home's value to decrease when the view changes to delivery trucks and parking lots." Okay, that seems to make sense. So Realtor.com was able to make the fairly intuitive link between next to shopping mall and decrease in home values, but Burgess & Associates was not able to make that link because my understanding of their fiscal impact study, they had no decline in homeowners next that live within the 200 feet and that live on Forest and Intervale, as well as no incremental costs for any big box retail for policing, even though I think your police force is fairly down in numbers right now. So how could you vote on something when you don't have a crucial cost like that into the fiscal impact study? But I'm here to talk about retail. So what I did is I just went to the internet and I looked at all the homes within the 200 feet, looked at their assessed value, and I said, okay, Realtor.com says it's going down. If it goes down 20%, what might that look like? Okay, 79 Forest Drive, negative 83,500. 263 Intervale Road, negative 76,300. 77 Forest Drive, negative 89,657. 75 Forest Drive, negative $96,020.
30 seconds.
73. Okay, it adds all up. And then I took a 5% decline along Forest Road and Intervale Road. I came up with a negative $1.6 million coming out of the pockets of private citizens that live next to this development. In addition to what comes out of their pockets, there's also lower property taxes now that can be gotten from these people. So maybe what would the result have been if the market research study had said something like, do you think it's fair that the Parsippany Council changed the law for an outside developer to allow a development that will cost local homeowners $1.6 million in lost property values? $1.6 million.
Okay, ma'am, time's up.
Real people, real money against the net benefit of $250 to $750 for the coffers. Real people, real money.
Thank you. Sir, if you'd like to speak, we got time. I didn't want 20 people to wait in line if we were shutting down at 10:30.
I'm sorry, I wasn't going to say anything.
Name and address?
I will sign in. My name is John Nitros. I just moved into Mountain Lakes. I moved here deliberately because this was a great community next to Parsippany, and there's a project here. I didn't do my homework. I didn't realize it was coming. Had I known this, I certainly would have not moved here, because I think you're going to decrease the value of what I paid for my house significantly with this. Now, what bothers me here is your people here, who are professionals, have given one point of view. The people here from the community have hired their professionals. You don't even give them the courtesy of giving the rebuttal. You give them a 3-minute talk. Those are the important statistics that you want to hear. Not everybody else is emotional. I'm emotional right now, but you got to hear these people before you make your decision. You just can't accept the whitewash that you got from your professionals. Thank you.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion to close the public just on this ordinance. No? Okay. They're going to start. Hold on. Okay.
10:28.
And may continue.
Motion.
Okay.
Are we going
to be able to talk at the next meeting?
Yes. We're continuing October 1st.
If I may.
No, there were more people who wanted to speak.
Well, I knew that. I just didn't want people standing for 15 minutes.
We'll consent to that.
Mr. Council President, I would recommend that the council entertain a motion to carry the public hearing to October 1st at 7:30 p.m. right here. We have this facility, right, Nancy? At which time the public hearing for this matter will be carried and will be resumed that evening.
Any objection to anybody on the council for a 7 p.m. start for October 1st?
Fine. Okay, you would have to change, there's a resolution on that
Okay.
would just have to be changed, which you can do, and I would recommend that that resolution be read into the record.
Okay.
Yancy, that you'll have to also, make sure you publish notice of that meeting, and also, publish with respect to the carrying of the public hearing to that night as well for this ordinance. I want a republication for the public hearing on the ordinance.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to carry the public session till October 1st, 7 p.m. Parsippany Hills High School.
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Creefy.
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelson and Mr. Farrar. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. DePiero.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes, at this time, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Motion to reconvene by Mr. Nelson, second by Mr. Creefy. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Here.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes, Mr. DiPiero, if you would continue. Oh, wait, no, never mind, because we held off. Ordinance 2013:29, Mr. Farrar.
An ordinance of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills in the County of Morris, New Jersey, amending the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills Code Section 4-34, fees governing service rendered by off-duty police officer, and 405-7, traffic controls for street and highway construction, and maintenance operation for municipal roads. The above ordinance was published.
Please, in the audience, if you're going to talk, go out in the hall.
The above ordinance was published in its entirety in the Daily Record, the official newspaper of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, on August 23, 2013.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Farrar, second by Mr. DiPiero. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to open this ordinance to the public.
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Creefy.
Second.
Second by Mr. Farrar. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, you'll be given 3 minutes.
Oh, mic's off.
Hold on.
Can you guys turn the mic on? Okay.
Is it on?
Yes.
Parsippany-Troy, 182 Hawkins Avenue. I'd just like to ask the question that this is, it was defeated once and now it's back on. I believe our cops deserve to be paid, but I do believe that there comes a point where greed becomes greed. I mean, $90 an hour to sit there and do something. Half the time you pass by, they're just standing there. I mean, I'd rather see somebody else get this money. I don't understand why we've got to keep raising prices when all you're doing is standing there. Half the time they're not controlling traffic, they're just standing there making sure everything's okay. To me, that's not worth $90. It's not worth $80. I mean, I just don't know how much more. Whether we pay for it or not, it just doesn't make any sense. It's all greed. Thank you.
Pat, just to give you a quick answer, the answer is actually not 90, it's not 80, it's actually 60. That's if they work a detail that goes over 80 hours, and over 8 hours. And after 8 hours, they're entitled to time and a half. So, I mean,
65.
that's why the number is 60.
65.
65. So it's actually, that's if they work a detail that goes over the 8 hours.
Because it's after 8 hours.
Working for the township.
Because it's after 8 hours.
So they just get it with that company, they just keep paying and paying and paying, and no problems. Nobody has a problem with these figures.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
Well, we pay 8 hours if they work.
No, I know that.
I'm saying,
know
it's
that.
the same thing.
It just, to me, it's just, oh God, it's just greedy. All right, maybe we get some unemployed guys out there helping.
I'll entertain a motion to close the public.
Do any of the officers, no, do any of the officers want to speak up in favor of this?
Entertain a motion to close the public.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Nelson, second by Mr. Karifi.
Whereas the above ordinance was read in title on second reading and hearing held thereon, now therefore be it resolved that said ordinance is passed on final reading, and that a notice of final passage of said ordinance be published in the newspaper according to law.
Motion by Mr. Farrar.
Second.
Second by Mr. Karifi. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes, ordinance 2013:30. Mr. Karifi.
An ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, Morris County, New Jersey, amending and supplementing Chapter 430, zoning of the Code of Township, Parsippany-Troy Hills, establishing prohibited uses in residential districts and establishing violations and penalties. The above ordinance was published in its entirety in the Daily Record, the official newspaper of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, on September 3rd, 2013.
Motion by Mr. Karifi.
Second.
Second by Mr. Farrar. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes, at this time I'll entertain a motion to open this ordinance to the public.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Nelson. Second by Mr. Karifi. All in favor?
Aye.
At this time I'll open this ordinance to the public. See no one come forward, entertain a motion to close.
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Karifi.
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Karifi.
Whereas the above ordinance is read in title on second reading and hearing held thereon, now therefore be it resolved that said ordinance be passed on final reading, and that a notice of final passage of said ordinance be published in the newspaper according to law.
Motion by Mr. Karifi.
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelson. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes, at this time I'll entertain a motion to open up to the public.
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Karifi.
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelson. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes, you'll be given 5 minutes to speak. We are putting a 30-minute time limit. Not that it's going to happen because there's no one left, but... Well...
Nobody realized. I gotta talk to him.
Parsippany-Troy, 182 Hawkins Avenue. Actually, what happened to the mayor?
I'm not sure.
Oh, me neither. Okay. Brian, I'll ask you this question since you're involved in it. Do you know if a response was sent to the ACLU? It was supposed to be sent, you devised by the Friday.
I believe Mr. Inglesino made a phone call and he was waiting on something. I know we received something today from Mr. Inglesino.
Yes, I spoke with Mr. Barocas last week. I think I'd indicated that shortly after the initial letter was sent, I reached out for Mr. Barocas. We spoke. He told me that I would be receiving a revised letter. I hadn't heard from him. I called him, did not get a return message. I then reached out to him late last week. He called me back. He indicated that he had been out ill and apologized for not returning my call. We had a pleasant conversation. He indicated that I would be receiving that revised letter by the end of this week. He indicated there was no need to respond to his letter, that, you know, I would review the revised letter that he would send me, and then I'll give him a call.
Okay, thank you. And this was for the mayor, so maybe somebody could check with him on this for me. I have always been questioning the sewer and water surplus money being used for other things. Now, he stressed the importance of keeping the sewer at $5 million at this time. I would really hate to see, and I was going to ask the mayor, that is he saying he will no longer touch our sewer surplus money to meet his budget? He has used $1.8 million of the taxpayers' money to meet his budget. Now, I understand his philosophy in meeting that budget, but it's just a philosophy. We know that an effort has to be made to get that money from other places. We are being overcharged, even though we've had reduced rates. If our surplus is that great, then our prices should start coming down more. But I would like this council to make an honest effort, whoever is in office next year, that we do not touch any of our surplus monies. They're there for a reason. They're not there to help you build a budget, inflate a budget, give raises out, or do whatever. The taxpayers don't want their money just being used to cover their budget, even though it may affect us later on. Let's start showing honest figures, okay? Stay away from the surplus, if at all possible, because one day we might need it a lot more than you think. We've had pretty bad storms. It could affect that too. So I'm asking you as a council to try to think differently next year in doing your budget. Try to get money from other places. Thank you. But ask the mayor that question.
I do know with the lowering of the sewer fees, they were going to see what's there next year and keep making it lower depending on what the surplus is. They didn't want to jump to a number and find out that it's not high enough either. So,
Yes, Mr. President, maybe Jasmine would remember, but I do remember last year, I believe it was the mayor, could have been Jasmine, you said it, that it was represented that they were hiring experts to conduct a study on what the proper surplus would be to be maintained. The mayor represented tonight that it was the superintendent who determined that it was $5 million. Is that correct?
no, he definitely said 5. I don't remember him saying that it was based
Well, my question is, was the expert that he said that said that we needed $5 million? Was that Mr. Bober, the superintendent of the sewer department?
That $5 million surplus?
Yes.
Figure came from Phil Bober, the superintendent, Ruby Malcolm, the CFO, and Frank Mangraviti, who was the consultant.
I'm sorry, well, I didn't catch the I couldn't hear you the last.
Frank Mangraviti.
And how did they come up with that number? What was it based on? Because historically, we've never maintained a $5 million surplus in that utility.
Well, we didn't have the luxury. We had as low as a $52,000
My question is,
surplus.
why $5 million? Why not $2 million? Why not $7 million? I mean,
Mr. Bober came up with the $5 million because of the potential projects that might have to be undertaken either on an emergency basis or in the event that the DEP or the EPA change regulations in terms of the levels of pollutants that can be discharged by the sewer plant. Mr. Mangraviti looked at, I believe, the operating budget. I can't, it was a while ago that.
Did Mr. Bober produce any report on it?
No.
His findings?
No, I think he's provided us with some memos, and he's discussed it with the council before, too, when we've talked about.
Yeah, but he never represented how much, I mean, because $5 million is almost 50% of the operating budget of the sewer utility. The sewer utility is about $10 million, right?
That sounds about right.
It's like
using rough
13,
round numbers.
13, yeah. It's a little over 13 million.
See no one else come forward, I'll entertain a motion to close the public.
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Creepy,
Second.
second by Mr. Farrar. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes. Consent agenda. Be it resolved, all items listed with an asterisk are considered to be routine, non-controversial by the Township Council. Be approved by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda, considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Motion by myself.
Second.
Second by Mr. Creepy. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes. At this time, I entertain a motion to approve the minutes from regular meeting 5/14/2013, special meeting 6/18/2013, regular meeting 6/18/2013.
So move.
I don't.
No?
Were you here for a while?
Oh, sorry. I'll take that back.
I'm not sure.
What was the question?
No, for what day? Yeah, I was here.
Motion by Mr. Farrar to
Yeah.
accept the minutes.
In August, I wasn't here.
I wasn't trying to date us.
In August, I wasn't here.
Second by Mr. Nelson. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes. Resolutions, non-consent agenda, or 2013-200.
Mr. Council President, I'd like to make a motion to table this 2013-200.
Motion by Mr. Nelson to table. Yeah.
You got a reason to table?
Yes.
We received word today that the loan did not go through, and they asked us to pull from the agenda. At this point, it was already
Okay.
on.
Thank you.
So hopefully by October, we'll see.
Motion to table by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Creepy. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
John, am I allowed to vote on this?
I know that you'd recuse yourself on all.
So I recuse myself.
So abstain.
Abstain.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes. Or 2013-201, Mr. DiPiero.
Resolution of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills confirming the appointment of Township Municipal Prosecutor and awarding a contract for professional services.
Motion by Mr. DiPiero.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Who are we appointing? Was that discussed at the last meeting that I wasn't here?
I believe we got an
It's
email.
Matthew Petracca.
I'm sorry?
Matthew Petracca
For how long are we appointing him?
for the remainder of this year.
Oh, this year? I'll second.
Motion by Mr. DiPiero, second by Mr. Farrar. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes. Before we do or 2013-202, Jasmine, would like.
Yep, 202 is relating to the COA spending plan. Last week we discussed the New Bridge project and Rose House project and the release of affordable housing funds prior to the issuance of a building permit. What Mr. Inglesino brought to light was that we also did not have an approved spending plan with COA regarding the New Bridge Rose House project. This also includes the Community Hope Project on Littleton Road, which the council had approved for $505,000, I believe, maybe $600,000. It was Mr. Inglesino's recommendation, and particularly after a conversation with the COA attorney, that we amend the spending plan before any funds are released, that the township would be at risk if we don't do that. The amendment to the spending plan is several-fold. First, it changes the addresses for the New Bridge project and the Community Hope project. The 5 of the projects that we have already endorsed for the special needs housing, that was the $2 million that we sent to HMFA last year. We actually have actual addresses for those. We didn't have addresses last year, so we included those 5 addresses. And then finally, we added the additional allocations that the council have made to the Moraine Road group home. That was the $52,000, and the Littleton Road group home, and that was $75,000. Those are the major changes in the spending plan. And we're looking to submit that as soon as possible so that we can have an approved spending plan before we release any funds.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So what's the total?
The total?
I mean, you said 2,075, I mean, what's the total?
It's...
You don't have it? Okay.
Well, the spending plan has probably...
No, I mean, what's the total that we're amending? I'm sorry.
It's, the dollar amount is just that $52,000 and the $75,000. But locations, but the other changes are related
Right.
to the addresses.
Okay, I just wasn't sure.
So we're good to go forward, right? Or 2013-202, Mr. Farrar.
Resolution of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, requesting review and approval of an amendment to the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund Spending Plan.
Motion by Mr. Farrar.
Second.
Second by Mr. DiPiero. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes. Or 2013-203, Mr. Karifi.
Resolution of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills revising the resolution authorizing the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills schedule of Township Council meetings for 2013.
Motion by Mr. Karifi.
Second.
Second by Mr. DiPiero. Roll call.
Make a comment about changing it to 7?
Mr. Council President, I just want to confirm that the October 1st meeting will be held at the Hills High School at 7 o'clock?
Yes.
Yes.
So the resolution should be, there should be a motion to amend the resolution to provide for the 7 o'clock time for the first.
For the first.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mr. President, I'd like to amend the resolution to begin the October 1st meeting at the Parsippany Hills High School at 7 p.m.
Amended motion by Mr. Nelson. Second by Mr. Karifi. Roll call.
So you guys didn't say 7 o'clock, it's 7:30, right?
7 o'clock.
for the first because it's open public.
Oh.
Because we're
Is that a problem?
continue, and I'd rather...
Okay.
Who was the second on that?
Second was Mr. Karifi.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion by Mr. Karifi, second by Mr. Farrar. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes.
Have a good night.
Good night to the 4 or 5 people still here.